180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can always use the hashtag OTB AM. A really busy show for you. Part 3 of our Bernard Brogan interview, with the conversation turning to the time that they actually make the breakthrough and the impact that Pat Gilroy has on his career. His brother Alan is going to join us for that conversation. We'll speak with Zach Tuohy about making 200 appearances in the AFL, an incredible achievement, just the second Irishman to do so. And we'll also preview Shamrock Rovers against Zlatan Ibrahimovic and AC Milan tonight in Tallaght. So a busy programme between now and 10 o'clock. To get the ball rolling this morning, we're looking back at the wonderful tributes that were paid to the late great Pat Smullen last night on the show by Dermot Weld, by Fran Berry and by Davey Russell. Have a look.
Well, we had to start the show this evening by paying tribute to Pat Smullen, who has passed away at the age of 43. He was 9-time Irish champion jockey, successful here and in the UK and in France. He won the Epsom Derby, as you've just heard, in 2016, a real highlight in his long and successful alliance with Dermot Weld. Pat was diagnosed with prostate cancer in March 2018. He fought tirelessly. We spoke to him on the show in his home in 2019. His determination then was palpable. He raised over €2.5 million for prostate cancer research after his diagnosis. And our thoughts in particular today are with his wife Frances and 3 children. Dermot Weld is on the line. Evening, Dermot.
Evening, good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for making time for us. I mean, we played Epsom there in 2016. You couldn't in your wildest nightmare imagine where we'd be.
No, it was very moving. You know, today has been a very, very emotional day, to be quite honest, and I was very proud the way all the people came out of the Curragh today to watch the funeral cortege go by. There was several hundred people out there just in our area to watch it going by, if you know what I mean. It stopped, as you may know, at the Curragh racecourse, and see the coffin with his with the number clause from both the Epsom and the Irish Derby of Harazand on it.
The outpouring for Pat has been so striking. I mean, he was an immensely popular person.
Well, he was a fabulous individual, and you know, his loyalty, his integrity speaks volumes, because that's the sort of man he was, if you know what I mean. He was first and foremost, he was a wonderful human being. He was kind, generous, but as I said, integrity and loyalty have to be right up there.
Which I presume is a big part of your long association together, 20-odd years.
Yeah, we're 20 years stable jockey here, you know what I mean, that we became wonderful friends. You know, we travelled the world, you know, some of the big race wins that he had. I always say we went to California with a very good filly called Dress to Thrill, but we went into the Lion's Den, we took on the 2 best turf fillies of the United States in a race called the Matriarch. And she went off 3rd or 4th favourite, but it was a brilliant ride from Patty. Outrode the 2 best jockeys riding on the west coast of America, and she got up to win either a head or a neck. But it was an unbelievable drive from Pat Smullen to beat the 2 best riders they had in America at the time. I forget who they were, Mike Smith and somebody else. And
Dermot, what were Pat's qualities as a jockey?
There were many. He's a guy that he did a lot of homework on. By that I mean study. What's going to be likely to make the running in races, how other jockeys were going to ride. When he came into the parade ring, possibly because he knew his horses so well here, we didn't really have much to discuss or to say, and he had a plan for every race. And his real quality was his ability to get horses in the right position in a race. Irrespective if the race was being run too quick or too slow, he was always able to get the horse into where he wanted to put the horse. This very nice, quiet guy, which he was, as I said to you, on the ground. When he got on a horse's back, Pat was ruthless. And he was a very tough opponent, I can tell you. But he got horses into where he wanted them to be in a race. And he had the ability then to get a horse in what we call a nice rhythm, that the horse was relaxed. He had wonderful hands. He could get a horse to relax. So here's a guy that he's in the exact correct position. This would be typified Harazand in the Epsom Derby. Difficult tracks like Epsom and indeed Ascot, he rode superbly. Like his ride to win on a horse called Rite of Passage, the Gold Cup of Royal Ascot, was superb. He set a track record, and himself and Johnny Murtha had a major set 2 all the way up the straight, and it was just a brilliant ride from Pat. And again, when he won on Free Eagle, again at Royal Ascot, he won a short head, the Prince of Wales Stakes, only a couple of years ago. And, you know, it was a dynamic ride from him.
Mm. I was listening to Ruby Walsh was talking somewhere this afternoon, and he was making the observation that he never felt Pat was a jockey, unlike others, I suspect, a jockey who had, you know, tons of natural self-confidence, that it was something he worked at, and maybe he worked so hard maybe as a result of that. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
I think that would be fair. I hope I, in some small way, helped to give him confidence. Very often I've just used to say, I actually remember going out from Melbourne Cup, joking him, I said, you just go out and enjoy yourself. And he knew what I meant by that. But he would do, as I said, he would have a lot of homework done on the opposition. And this is the key. He would have his horse in the position where he wanted him to be so he could deliver his challenge. Like, he won the English 2000 Guineas for me on a horse called Refused to Bend, which, by the way, I think is a very appropriate name, because when Pat was diagnosed with cancer, that's what he didn't do. He refused to bend.
You said, Dermot, you became friends as well. You travelled the world together. In your casual conversations on flights or in cars or in helicopters, was it always racing that you talked about, or other stuff as well?
No. We talked about the world. We talked about life. We talked about how short life is, surprising. You know, I'm fully aware of humanity, and, you know, he was a very humble guy, Pat Smullen. And that was one of the lovely qualities he had. He was a highly respectful, humble person. And Ruby was right. He didn't realise how good he was. That's the best way to put it. And he didn't want to realise how good he was. He was 9 times champion jockey. He was I would say he was unquestionably in the top 6 riders of the world, not just of Europe. And he was in the top 6 of the world for many years.
He said his diagnosis in 2018 was like being hit with a sledgehammer, and I fully imagine it was. Can you give us an insight, maybe, Dermot, into how he dealt with the last 2 years of his life?
I think he dealt exceptionally well with the last 2 years of his life. He was a fighter. As I said, he refused to bend. That's why I mentioned the name of the horse he won the Guineas, that we won the Guineas with. It was a Moyglare colt. He just refused to give in. He refused to lie down under it. And I said he did exactly. Remember, this time last year he hoped to ride actually in the charity race, the Legends race, which was the race that started off to raise the $2.5 million for cancer research. But he fought it. That's the best way to put it. He fought it hard, and that's why I feel so sad, because he fought so hard. He deserved to live longer for his 3 wonderful children and his dear wife.
I wouldn't for a moment to profess to say I knew Pat Smullen very well at all, but I was in his home in 2019, and we had a long afternoon with him. We interviewed him, and then I sat around him and his wife, and one of his children was there as well for a cup of tea. And what jumped out is they're such a unit, you know, and they were in this together, and I can't imagine that house today.
Yeah, neither can I. It's unbelievably sad. It's just so blooming tragic that here was a guy that was so fit, kept himself so well, didn't smoke, did everything right, if you know what I mean. Fitness fanatic, and at the age of 41 gets pancreatic cancer. It was just unbelievable. But as I said, also, which life can be so unfair, because he deserved to get more than 2 years, if you know what I mean. Even being designed, because he tried so hard to fight it. He did not give in to it. He never gave in to it. And it was just so tragic. In fact, even after we were fortunate to win the 2 Group 1s on Sunday, he texted his congratulations how the 2 fillies had won those big races. And his mind was crystal clear, and yet within 48 hours he was gone.
Dermot, we appreciate you coming on. I'm sure it's been a long day, so thanks so much for that.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Dermot Well there, paying tribute to Pat Smullen. And we have on the line with us as well a colleague, friend, I think primarily as well, of Pat Smullen. Fran Berry is there. Evening, Fran.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, very well. I mean, what can you say past a certain point?
Yeah, that's it. It's been a funny day, Joe. Funny 48 hours, you know. Like we knew the last month things were going to be weren't good and they weren't progressing, and it was. But when the news came through yesterday morning, things weren't good. It's like a hammer blow for everybody, and you know, just what Pat has done over the last 2.5 years since his diagnosis and the treatment, and you know, it's just a terrible thing, and a terrible thing for his family, like Francis and the kids, and to see them all there today at the Curra Racecourse was heartbreaking.
How long have you known Pat? Did you come through around a similar time, Fran?
Yeah, I'm 39, Joe, and Pat was obviously 4 years ahead of me, and he was just getting established when I started riding. And I don't know, it's probably like some of them friendships that don't go. We didn't see eye to eye initially. We used to have a few run-ins and just getting going and rivalry and whatnot. And then we just seemed to gel and travelled a lot together. And Pat moved up to Kilcullen, and we travelled more together, and Declan McDonough and Kevin Manning and the four of us, and just became firm friends over time. And you know, really tough rivalry on the track. Like, you know, you couldn't make it up how you go out and ride against each other, try to get rides off each other, and then travel racing together and laugh about it on the way home. You know, it was a unique friendship and situation for the four of us, not just myself and Pat, you know.
Yeah, all kind of, you know, facades are put in the ground. You're kind of on top of each other and seeing the real, you know, the good, the bad and the ugly at times of each other. And Dermot, and you mentioned as well, talked about his competitive edge, which you don't really hear so much when he's being interviewed, particularly of late. You know, he's so mild-mannered and modest and quietly spoken. So give us a sense of the fight that was in him as a jockey.
Yeah, do you know what? He just had to win every day, Joe, and he wanted to win. And I think it was from where he started at. It was all or nothing when he left school to go riding. And as he said numerous times, and he said it once or twice in interviews, it had to work. And he never took his foot off the pedal for fear that if he did, things would drop away. And he brought that to Roscommon on a Monday or Ballinrobe on a Tuesday. And it was the same Pat Smullen that you got in Royal Ascot on a big day. You know, he just was so consistent. And I think from the smallest man in racing, with a horse training at or own it, to the largest, they wanted him because they knew they were getting that commitment.
Pancreatic cancer is such a devastating blow. Did you see much of him or talk much to him over the past couple of years?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, like when the diagnosis came through that time, I was in England at the time and flew back the next day and went to see him in Vincent's. And, you know, like to see what he went through, and he never once complained. It was just, we're getting this treatment, this to plan, this stage, next stage. And when there was a setback, you know, it'd be a blow, but then he'd pick himself up. And, you know, and I think the last couple of years, the not riding, but the time he spent with his family, he knew that was, looking back, and now precious time, you know. And I think he really appreciated to have that opportunity.
You didn't make it back to the Curra today, Fran, or did you?
No, I did. I'm actually back living in Ireland now, so I was there, and it was very touching and so sad in some respects, but credit to the whole industry and the Curra racing community that turned out today. It was very fitting, very fitting, and to go to the Curra where he basically spent every morning working, and he loved riding out there. He loved doing the work, and loved race riding there. So it was just a great way, especially with the COVID times that we're in, for people to just pay their respects.
Stay with us a moment. That's Fran Berry on the line. We have Davey Russell with us as well. Davey, your memories of Pat Smullen?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, look, I suppose I was from looking at Pat from a different side, admiring him from a different side, because we would arrive, you know, during the summer months, there used to be a lot of mixed meetings, and you'd see we'd be arriving at the races when the flat lads would be kind of finishing up, you know what I mean? They'd have their last couple of rides, and, you know, as Fran alluded to already, whether it was Ballinrobe or whether it was the Galway Festival or Royal Ascot, and it's not an easy thing to do for a jockey to do, to give 100% to win a 2,000 guineas and then get into your car and drive 3 or 4 hours up to Ballinrobe to ride in a bottom grade handicap. And Pat kind of knew the importance of that to them small trainers, we'll call them.
Yeah, so the dedication, the professional's professional then, in many respects. I mean, it's reminiscent of what you always hear about AP McCoy, Davey. Are you gone? think we've lost Davey. We'll get him back up in the line. Fran Berry is still with us, but you can pick up on that point, Fran. I mean, you'd have an appreciation of how difficult that is day after day, meeting after meeting. He clearly had an incredible drive.
Yeah, Joe, he did. As Davey said, like, it was just pure, just, you know, application to job, professionalism, and modesty as well. I think Dermot hinted at that there, but, you know, like, he dealt with the smallest of the game to the best of the game, and, like, he'd win the Epsom Derby. And from what I can remember, he was riding in Listowel the next day, or Naas on the Monday, you know, and there was no change in his demeanour. He got great enjoyment and great pride of it, but it was just a measure of a well-balanced man who got the game, but knew that he was lucky to be in a position to do these things, you know.
Yeah, so it sounds like a kind of lovely mix of very genuine modesty and yet huge pride in his achievements as well, if that's kind of possible.
Indeed, and to ride with him, he was a tough competitor. You know, like he never gave an inch or asked for an inch, and you know, but outside of riding off horseback, he was very, very helpful also to younger jockeys and lads coming through. He was a sounding board for a lot of them, and you know, that, like, and he teached them on the track as well. Like, if they needed a lesson taught, he was there to teach them, but he'd be very helpful to them, and you know, he was very free with his time off the horse as well to people that needed a bit of help.
Davey Russell is back with us. Davey, I know, looking at your Twitter account earlier, you were certainly mindful of the fundraising efforts he put in after his diagnosis. I mean, and time is such a precious commodity when you've been dealt that diagnosis, and yet I think we're talking close to €3 million raised.
Yeah, but again, it gets back to the matter of Joe. I suppose he's 100% man, and I'd say, you know, Pat wouldn't probably have agreed to doing something unless it was going to raise huge awareness. Now, lucky enough, I got into the car that day and went racing, and it's definitely the best day as a spectator I've ever gone racing. The most enjoyable day I've ever put down. It was just a fantastic day itself, and then for all the lads to compete in it, and then for the public then to get behind it. It was just a marvellous event. I don't think it would ever be replicated. And that was all the credit to Pat and his commitment that he put into it. I don't think he ever thought that they'd raise the money they did, but it'll just tell you the measure of the man. When he asked for something, people gave freely, because Pat had given freely to so many people himself, you know, and a lot of people just gave back that time that he'd given to them. So it was a fantastic day. I can't tell you how good a day it was. It was just brilliant, and it was bucketing rain. It was cold. It was everything. And it was just a great day.
This is pretty much to the day last year, I think, is it?
I think it's actually to the day, would you believe? It's an amazing, the world works in the terrible ways, but it's to the day, I think, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so yeah. Pat was in touch, or somebody was in touch, and they trying to get us the great and the good of racing together to just put on a day's racing and raise as much as possible.
Yeah, no, they had AP McCoy said he'd never ride again, and he came out of retirement, you know, Ruby, Johnny Murta. Now, Frank, did you ride in it?
No, Davey, but he lined up Paul Carberry, yeah. Richard Hughes, Ted Durkin, Kieran Fallon.
Yeah, Charlie Swan, you know, lads, you know, we don't realise how good a bunch of lads they were, but when you see them all together, it really was amazing. It even sends a tingle down my spine at the moment, thinking about the day that was in it. It was fantastic. Gordon had a runner in it, I think, so I was in the parade ring. I was lucky enough to be in the parade ring and be in the whole lot. And it was a fitting day for the man that it was, you know, for, you know, and yeah, he was just, but he was great to watch, would you believe? I used to love watching him. He didn't have your typical style of a flat jockey. You know, he was kind of a little bit stronger and squarer. Like, you know, he was unbelievably strong in the saddle, and it was always a joy to watch. You know, I saw a marvellous video of him riding the winner of a handicap in England. He dropped out stone last, and still with 50 yards to go, he was still hanging on to, like, he had the confidence to do them things as well, which is it's very hard to get in a jockey, you know.
Davey, Russell, thanks so much for coming on. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Fran, I'll give you a final word. As I said, I know you were good friends and knew each other a long time. I mean, he won't be forgotten in a hurry. I mean, you listen to Davey there, and I think Jessica Harrington's very keen to come on in a moment, and Dermot Weld, and the outpouring across the sport and beyond was just so striking. He made a real impression for a quiet man and somebody who wouldn't have tried to garner attention, certainly deliberately.
Yeah, Joe, you know, the last 24 hours, we just said it all, how popular he was and how much he touched people's lives. And I suppose the one legacy, apart from a wonderful family that he leaves behind him, is that cancer trials research. And if that €3 million that he put together, which I don't know, how do you comprehend that amount of money to be garnered on one day, contributes to saving somebody's life or improving the research into pancreatic cancer, that we can see progress, I think he will be happy with that. You know, it's his legacy, and he was just a really sound, wonderful man that you knew what you see was what you get, and he was very good to people, and it's just such a loss. Okay,
well listen, thanks so much for taking the time today. I know it's really been a rough 24 hours to say the least, but Fran Berry, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks. That's Fran Berry there. Just before we sign off for the moment, Johnny Murtagh was on OTB AM this morning, a long-time rival, as Dermot Weld mentioned there initially, and he was on with the lads this morning to pay tribute to Pat Smullen. Have a listen.
He was the man in the weigh room, you know, in the end, that everybody wanted to be like. Everybody wanted to be like Pat Smullen, because, you know, what you got was what you seen. It was just, he was just, hey, he was the main man. But I think when he started that fundraising, I think outside the racing, you know, that all the other people around the world got to see the other side of Pat Smullen. That steely determination. Listen, when he got diagnosed first, it was not a good outcome. You know, we knew it was not going to be a good outcome, but he went through the treatment, and I genuinely thought, this guy is going to pull through. You know, it's not going to beat this guy. It's just another hurdle that's coming his way. He's going to overcome it. I met him at a couple of functions. You know, in the last 2 years, he seemed in great form. Always very positive. Always very positive. His mind was always very positive. And then to go and do the fundraising, to start, you know, to create the race that brought together all the champions from all over, Mackay, Walsh, Charlie Swan, Paul Carberry. You know, no one else would have done that, only for Pat Smullen. You wouldn't have done it for anybody else. So I think that's what he had. He had that. And listen, I thought, listen, he's going to come through. He's going to come through. But you know, it was only last week speaking to Kevin O'Ryan when I said, "Oh, how is Pat?" Just by his reaction, I got the feeling that all was not well. You know, but it's a hammer blow. But I think everybody outside racing got to see the human being he was, the man he was. They got a feel for him, and as I said, you couldn't but just love the guy. You know, as I said, I had those great battles with him. We were head to head on many occasions, but deep down, I really loved the guy.
Well, there you are. Johnny Murtagh this morning on OTB AM, one of many paying tribute to Pat Smullen, who has passed away at the age of 43.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The second of these sees Ian Wright.
I love watching great players play. I love watching great games.
And Sol Campbell sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Thursday, 17th of September. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
We all talk about what might happen and our hopes and dreams for the day, but that's not real life.
Dadcast with Cadbury Freddo Treasures. Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
And a reminder for you that Off the Ball is the only place to hear live and exclusive commentary from the Premier League and the Heineken Champions Cup. We're going to be on air at the earlier time of 12:30 on Sunday with full commentary of Ulster's Champions Cup clash with Toulouse, commentary from Cian Tracey and Bernard Jackman. Then at 4:30, it's Chelsea against Liverpool with Nathan Murphy and Kenny Cunningham. It's a proper grudge match because the two managers seem to genuinely hate each other at this point, which, you know, as a neutral is great for all of us. 087 180 180 is the number to get in touch with us this morning. And a reminder, of course, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. How confident are you feeling, Eoin? Pretty confident?
Confident about which now?
Well, just life in general, you know. You're a confident guy.
You know, I guess I've got a pep in my step at all times, you know. Why live life without confidence when you can live life with confidence, I guess. I thought you were referring to, I don't know, Shamrock Rovers tonight or something like that, and I was like, wow, thanks for putting me on the spot and putting the hopes and dreams of this nation, at club level anyway, on my shoulders, because the answer to that would have been, yes, I am confident. Regular
viewers are wondering, oh, look, Owen's got a new set. What's going on?
Sure, I had to come home this week. Could be locked out of Dublin at this point.
Ooh, like, that'd be good, wouldn't it? You'd be like, oh, what an accident that I'm not up in that stinking reservoir of disease, as it's been referred to, Dublin.
Yeah, like, I mean, I wouldn't be great at getting a lock in at any point, but getting a lock out at this point would be something that I would greatly welcome.
That's not what they tell me in the famous GA haunts of the capital city. Is that a piano you're sitting behind? Can you turn around and tickle the ivories for us?
I will not go full Alexis Sanchez this morning, but if you play your cards right, maybe at some point in the future, I will play chopsticks or something.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what kind of pianist are you?
I used to be a good one, but it's not like riding a bike, unfortunately. I can't just sit there and go back to full 14-year-old me. And actually, you know, just to get things real for a second here, it is actually one of the great regrets in my life that I didn't keep it up. I was too cool, you know. I was doing my junior cert. I was too cool to be doing piano lessons at the weekend. For all the kids out there this morning, don't do that. Don't give up your music. It's actually a good talent to have.
Yeah, you can be impressive at parties by just whipping it out. Anyway, before that before that takes us down a rabbit hole.
Oh dear.
Zlatan in Tala, Eoin, take it away.
Yeah, AC Milan are certainly whipping out their joker tonight in Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It's like it's this incredible novelty at first thought that he will be playing in Tala tonight. I think Stephen Bradley has been. I'm not sure if he's been putting fuel on the fire of this idea that it is just another team. But if it was, I don't know, Sassuolo or some other mid-table Serie A team that might be coming to Tala, it wouldn't have the same fanfare as AC Milan. They're not what they once were, but when you have a character like that coming along, you definitely start thinking where this ranks in the great international players who've played in Ireland, who've had cameos. I know, like, I mean, George Best would have played a couple of games in the League of Ireland, same with Bobby Charlton, but like you immediately think of like Pelé and Dalymount in 1972. Like, that was a great disappointment by all accounts at the time. So what you're hoping for tonight is an exact replica of that someone comes with all this profile, but perhaps with a lack of end product.
Yeah, look, the hope is it's a one-off tie. Somehow Shamrock Rovers can have one of their most famous nights ever.
Well, that's it, exactly. And what a night it would be for this to happen. Like, when you talk about recent history, you immediately think of Stephen Kenny and his Dundalk side, but they didn't come up against a team with the profile of AC Milan at any point up till and including the group stages of the Europa League that year. So this is obviously on a silver platter, the opportunity to be the biggest night in recent memory for a League of Ireland club. Massively up against it, obviously. I haven't checked the odds. Like, I mean, you're catching a team in pre-season is the one thing. I mean, we used that line as a reason why Finland looked sharper than Ireland in certain areas of the pitch a couple of weeks back. I presume there's going to be some Italian commentators tonight saying, well, the League of Ireland's been on for months and months at this point. This is a reason why they might look sharper than us. And the fact of the matter is, AC Milan won't have an ounce of respect for Shamrock Rovers. They might be saying that in the build-up, but let's face it, they won't have an ounce of respect for Rovers. So this is a great opportunity to create this little bit of a siege mentality. There isn't going to be a shortage of incentive tonight for people on the Rovers side of things.
Paddy Parmick, AC Milan, 6-1 on to win the game, 13-1 Shamrock Rovers to qualify, 50-1 on AC Milan.
Wow, that is that's incredible odds right there. Like, I mean, if you're a Rovers fan, you obviously have to have a little bit of a nibble at that. Like, the question is, how do Bows fans feel about this? How does the League of Ireland at large feel about this? I feel that people like myself who aren't aligned with the League of Ireland club certainly wish every person in this position to win. Do League of Ireland dyed-in-the-wool fans of teams that don't, or supporters that don't support Shamrock Rovers, do they hope that AC Milan come here and win 5-0? Is that how it works?
I mean, we're going to talk a little bit later on with somebody who knows the League of Ireland intimately, in Stephen Doyle, who may have a hankering after a team who wears red and black. So that's a good question to pose right now, but it is a good question for the rest. You've got to assume that everybody, apart from the Bows fans, want Rovers to do well, right? Or is that actually the ultimate? Is that completely wrong? It's like, you see, you don't have any understanding of this as a Kerry supporter. If Cork go on and win All Ireland, you're like, well, at least it stopped Dublin, right?
Mm.
It's not
yeah.
You know, you're never cheering for Dublin under any circumstances.
No, that's it. Well, like, I guess it would be kind of. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, Cork Dublin will be a good example for an All Ireland final. You want the underdog to win, but not if your rival and your hated enemy is the underdog.
You don't respect Cork enough. That's the thing. You never respect Cork enough, so it's irrelevant. Whereas with Rovers and Bows, there's a proper needle to it. Yeah,
and also as well, I definitely think that there is such a thing as a League of Ireland fan, as in they're fans of the league, and a lot of people rightly feel that it is their duty to support the league, and seeing a team going toe-to-toe and holding their own against AC Milan would be great for the league. So I think it's 90% of teams. It's just if you're a Bows fan, probably not going that far, but deep down you do be like, well, at least there's a positive here. It's good for the League of Ireland in which we play. Speaking
of washed up has-beens who've had a great career in the past, Gareth Bale may be joining Spurs. Is he already in that bracket, or is there going to be an Indian summer for what was one of the most amazing athletes ever to play in the Premier League? Bear in mind, he was by far the best player in the league for a period of time.
It's a really interesting one, especially the context of this season being the All or Nothing documentary. We've got unbelievable context for Tottenham's season this year. You see Dele Alli being left out of a squad this week. We saw in the documentary that Jose Mourinho didn't like Dele Alli as a trainer. What is your suspicion of how good a trainer Gareth Bale is? Like, maybe I think maybe it's a very specific set of circumstances where he wasn't putting in the effort because he just didn't get the respect he felt he deserved from Real Madrid. And you presume to reach his level at some point in his career, he would have had to have been the hardest man on the training pitch and worked harder than everybody else. But definitely over the last little while, you would have had to have said that he's got used to relaxing, to coasting, because he feels he wasn't being given a fair crack at a whip. Does he then arrest that, and does he get up to the level that Jose Mourinho wanted from Dele Alli every single day in training? Well, that's going to be one of the big questions. It's going to be fascinating if they sign him, which looks like it's going to happen on the loan deal, and if they sign Reguilon as well, the new left back. It definitely puts a whole new hue on the Spurs team, and it's one of the benefits of having a transfer window open for a month into the season. He already got a pretty good gauge of where Spurs are at last Sunday, and they're not at it at all. That top six finish would actually be an achievement on last Sunday's evidence, but with these two additions, they'll be going for top four. All right, it's 4 minutes past 8 here on OTB AM this morning, and one of the great international sports careers by an Irish person was crowned really when Zach Tuohy hit the milestone of his 200th AFL game at the weekend just past. And I'm delighted to say we have him live on the line from Australia. Zach, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, guys. Yeah, not too bad. Stuck in a hotel here like I have been for the last few months, but could be worse. 200
not out. It is an incredible achievement. When you think back on the first time that you arrived over in Australia, what was your intention and what was your dreams at that point?
Well, funnily enough, the first time I came on a 2-week trial back in 2008, I actually hated the experience. I've said this a few times. I didn't like it at all, but that was a very small sample size. And when I did come back home after that trip, I made myself come back because I knew I'd regret it if I didn't. And yeah, one of those sliding doors moments that everyone has in their life where if I didn't make myself come back the second and third time, yeah, I shudder to think what kind of life or career I would have had. But, you know, the ambition for me has always been to win a premiership. Once you cement yourself as a fairly regular AFL player, the goal has to be to win some silverware. And yeah, I think we're a decent chance. We have been for a couple of years, but hopefully this is the year.
It's a career, I think, that the people here, kind of everybody gets measured against what Jim Steins did, but actually of the hundreds of Irish lads who go over and go back after their 2-week trial, almost nobody gets to nail down a place and have a really long career. You're the second Irish person in history to hit the 200 mark. What's the key to actually being able to tough it out, do you think?
Well, there's a lot of good fortune involved in not getting injured. I mean, that's kind of stating the obvious, but, you know, being able to string consecutive games together makes the homesickness a lot easier to deal with because you're at the very least playing at the top level. But I'm not sure. The only Irish guys who ever get brought out here are obviously really talented, and a lot of those didn't work out for one reason or another. So the stars seem to align for me. I've enjoyed my time, you know, incredibly from the get-go. Really, once I actually became a listed player after those trials, I've just loved it. And I must admit that the prospect of not like being a career player never really occurred to me. Little bouts of homesickness here and there, but as soon as I signed the contract, I just don't recall ever conceiving that this wouldn't be my long-term job, if you like. So yeah, maybe good fortune's a key.
I think that mindset as well is actually not thinking that I'm here for a set amount of time and just seeing where, being open to whatever the experience actually ends up being. So as far as I know, you've married a native, is that right?
Not yet, but yeah.
Okay, sorry. Your life partner is a native.
I'm engaged. Yeah, I can't get away from her now anyway. 2 kids and everything. She gets after me no matter what.
But you kind of became somebody who was living in Australia as opposed to an Irish person living in an Irish enclave pretty early on. Is that right?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, culturally, it's a very easy place to live. It's quite similar to back home, and I stuck my roots in the ground from a fairly early stage in my career. So, yeah, I've got 2 Australian kids and an Australian partner. So, yeah, I'm stuck, I think.
All the Tyrone fans were very excited when they see a returning star coming to play for them. And obviously, it's a very different story. Is there at some point in your future a season or 2 seasons or an itch that you need to scratch about playing intercounty for Laois?
Yeah. As I've said this as well all along, you know, I have loved my time here, and homesickness hasn't taken me down like it has some other players, but that doesn't mean I don't miss it a lot. And not playing for Portlaoise was easily the biggest challenge, and those instances where I did have homesickness, it was almost exclusively because of football and not playing football as opposed to my family. So yeah, I do have ambition to play for club and county again, as long as my body lets me, and not getting any younger, I am feeling the hits a little bit more than I used to. But as long as I'm physically up to it, I fully intend on putting at least a year aside and playing club and county.
And you would inflict the Irish winter on your partner and kids?
She's onto a winner as well, so I wouldn't feel too sorry for her. She's actually quite happy to move home. We've been home at least every other year, and she loves it back there. So there's a good to fair chance, regardless of where I'm playing after my career, that I'll end up back home. Right.
Okay, that's interesting because you started a podcast recently as well over lockdown, which you know the whole world did. But what was the genesis of that? It's kind of it's really interesting. It's not about Aussie rules. It's not about being a sports person. It's about success and failure and leadership and that kind of stuff.
It's exactly it. Yeah, we actually did it last year, and we've been quite slack over lockdown. But look, I'm really interested in this forum and this format. I think it lends itself to far more interesting conversations and, you know, your stock standard, say, radio or whatever. But yeah, I guess through some connections we made in football, we got in touch with some people who've got really interesting stories, and we tried to dip our toe in the podcasting world, as you said, like everyone has. And it was great fun, but we were very conscious not to make it a football podcast. In fact, I love talking about sort of football and the nuance of it amongst friends and teammates, but it bores the living out of me talking about it, sort of, you know, trying to pundit the game and stuff. It just doesn't intrigue me. So I'm far more interested in the people themselves who play it than I am the nuance of the sport. So this was a perfect way for me to see what it's all about.
On that note then, you said something really interesting just a couple of minutes ago about sometimes was it you shudder to think about what life would have been like if you didn't get back on the plane the second time. When you do have those moments and you are thinking about what that life would have been like, what would you have ended up doing if you'd stayed living and working in Ireland?
It's a good question, and I honestly don't know. So Carlton first got in touch with me, my first club. I think I might have still been in secondary, or I'd only just finished. So from very early into my sort of, after school life, I was only ever going to play football as far as I was concerned, which I'm pretty lucky it worked out. But look, I would have tried to weasel my way into the sports world somehow. There's no doubt about it. And as I said, I found that I loved the media side of things, and this type of stuff. I really enjoy it. But if I hadn't gotten the exposure to the media stuff through football, I just don't know what I would have ended up doing, to be perfectly honest. So quite lucky it worked out over here.
Did you have an intention to go to college in Ireland before Carlton said, look, don't worry about that, come on over?
Yeah, but even still, like, upon reflection, I did a year in Carlow, IT, did a little course in Portlaoise before I left. But during all that time, I knew I was coming to Australia. So can't honestly say I gave everything to my academic pursuits. Which I regret, and I've done some work here since I've gotten here, but I didn't have another career on my mind at that stage. The second they got in touch with me, I was going to be a footballer, and that was it.
Zach, it's interesting that you talk about how you've got no interest in punditry and breaking down the game, because I was going to ask about what attributes are required to actually make an AFL player, especially somebody from Ireland. I guess a more appropriate question is what type of person is required to actually make it an AFL. From your time spent there, what is the answer to that question?
Yeah, I think that is a far more appropriate question now. And even the clubs here, when drafting the Australian guys, put a lot of work into the kind of psychology of the person you're bringing into your club. I don't know. I think I think people who aren't really driven to succeed for the right reasons get weaseled out of your club really quickly. I've seen a lot of really talented players come and go, and then I've seen some moderately talented players have stellar careers because of the type of person they are. So talent's important. I don't believe for a second that talent is a myth like some people do. I think it's incredibly important. But yeah, I guess the thing I've always said to any Irish guys who are given the opportunity to come out here is that it isn't a holiday. It's a fantastic living if you can forge a career, and I'm very lucky, but it's not a holiday. It's bloody hard work. And in the first couple of years, you tend to be playing in front of next to nobody on crap ovals, playing on freezing cold mornings. So it's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's bloody hard work if you're coming out.
When you were saying there that AFL teams put a lot of work into psychology, what sort of thing are you talking about there? Because I know, say, in the NBA draft, they actually interview their prospective draft picks as much as watching tape of them playing.
Yeah, all the players here pre-draft get interviewed. That's fairly standard. I think that's been par for the course for quite a while now. And I just think culture is a word that gets, I'm not sure if it's the same back home, but culture gets thrown around a lot here. And nobody's really sure exactly what it means, but at least from what I can tell, it's the values of the people that make up the organisation. And if you can somehow find incredibly talented people, because that is important, who have really good values, you'd be amazed at how sustained your success can be, as opposed to just picking the best player who's available. So yeah, they've screened them, obviously physically and medically screened them, but quite a bit of work goes into the background checks of the players before they're drafted, as well as the interviews.
How do you prepare yourself for something like that then, if you are an Irish kid about to go over?
Well, I guess it's probably, the process is a bit different for the Irish guys, I guess. So They're first picked on their attributes and whether or not they feel those attributes could translate to AFL. And then I'm sure the club would be in regular contact. And again, it's not that hard, especially these days, to speak to coaches and people involved with any given player to find out what type of personality he has. And I'd be surprised if that wasn't going on with the Irish guys, before they are brought out here as well.
It does seem that someone like Mark O'Connor is well placed to put in a very, very good career in the AFL. I guess we all knew his talents before leaving, but again, you just are never sure if a player is going to make it down there. Is he on that path? Is what we're seeing, what you're seeing on the inside?
Yeah, remarkable. So we have, every club has something called their leadership group in the AFL, and it's a selection of 5-6 players, usually voted for by the rest of the playing group and the coaches, who they feel best represents, the core group of players and the coaches, and they kind of act as a conduit between players and coaches. He's already in our leadership group at our club, and he's only been here for a few years. It's a remarkable achievement, and it really shouldn't be undersold. But it was pretty obvious with him in particular that he was made of the right stuff when he came out. He's taken very little guidance from me. He's driven his own career incredibly. And like, Geelong's not an easy team to crack into. We are quite strong, and we've been strong for, honestly, about 15 years. Like, it's a really well-run organisation, and he's come straight in and debuted very early, and he's already in the leadership group. So can't really give much more high praise than that at this stage of his career.
I know you said that at some point the plan is to come back, but would there be a plan at some point to go back again and be involved in Australian rules? It's always an interesting career when somebody comes from the outside and sees a couple of different organisations and finishes at an organisation that's really well run, because it means that you've got loads of experience to understand exactly what the strengths and the benefits of a well-run organisation are and what you need to do. And that's a lot of corporate knowledge to not be using in the sports.
Yeah, but I guess a lot of it, I think, especially with the leadership stuff, is highly transferable to even the business world. So I would like to stay involved in sports in some capacity. Not sure I'd be able to be a coach, or at least if I was going to be a coach, I think I'd work closely with younger players as opposed to any great ambitions of becoming a senior coach. Whereas, for example, I'd love to go back and work with younger teams back in Ireland. I think there's potentially a lot of good I could do back there. Just given the fact that there's not quite as many ex-AFL players in Ireland. I mean, we're 10 for a penny over here. So look, I think I'll end up in Ireland post-career. I think I'll end up doing sports. I'll be involved in sports in some capacity, as not just as a player. How that looks exactly, I'm not sure, but I'd be willing to bet it's going to be in Ireland.
That's interesting, because I did a piece recently with Cora Staunton, and she said that in the women's AFL that there's an assigned person within every organisation to look after the wellness and outside exterior world, and in many cases that's actually like what is your job going to be, because they're obviously part-time and they're not full-time and they can't live off their salaries, and no one is actually going to make enough money from that to live forever. And I presume in the AFL there's also kind of someone in the organisation whose job it is to kind of go, well, what are you actually going to do after this, so that's not a concern on a day-to-day basis. Have you already put down those plans? Is that something you're already thinking about, or is it still far enough away that you don't need to make those plans seem too imminent?
Yeah, I'd never say it's far enough away. Those are famous last words, I would have thought. But we have, PDM, player development managers at every club, and their job is to find out the players' interests outside of football, and, through networking within the AFL or within your own club, try and get the blokes into those specific organisations. You'll find a lot of players, for example, a lot of our guys are really interested in real estate and stocks and that type of thing. So they've all been put out into local businesses and given a taste of what that life's like. Again, with the media side of things, they know I'm quite interested in it. So given quite a few opportunities to explore that side of the world. So every club has those because work-life balance is important now more than ever.
Yeah, and do players automatically see the benefit of it? I'm always interested in that, because we've had people come in who were Olympians and the only thing they ever wanted to do was be an Olympian, and you're in the middle of the conversation with them going, and presumably you know this isn't going to last forever, and they're like, no, I've got to exclusively focus on this because that's my goal. And you just have this automatic worry that actually when that happens and you reach the Olympics, there's going to be this crash immediately afterwards. At least in professional sports, there's a big group of people, so there is somebody in the dressing room going, calm down, you need to go and live your life.
Yeah, it's hard though, because you commit so much physically and emotionally to your your team and your sport, and it is. I mean, I don't know how not to be a footballer. I played when I was 6 or 7 in Portlaoise, and I've basically never stopped, and I'm in my 30s now. So there is a part of me, an old school part of me, which thinks I just should ignore it as well. That I've got a couple of years of elite football left, and that should be my sole focus, and whatever happens after that, we'll figure it out then. That's probably a naive, silly way of doing it, and I've changed slightly over the last couple of years, given my old age. But yeah, it's hard not to. If you've committed your whole life to reaching the pinnacle of whatever sport it is, I'm not sure you want to be listening to somebody talking to you about the end when you're still trying to reach the top. So it's a challenge, but yeah, our guys do buy into it, to answer your question. Especially the younger boys. The first to 3 years don't really have a choice. They go through a lot of meetings and do a lot of little courses and stuff to figure out what they're interested in. And then the older guys are kind of given free rein to explore the different areas they want to explore.
Zach, from everything you know, and obviously the difference in the games, is it going to be easy or difficult for Conor McKenna to step straight back into playing Gaelic football?
He never really stopped. If you look at some of his highlights, he very much kept the GAA alive over here. But he is an incredible talent, and the Tyrone people who are excited to have him back should be excited. He's a remarkable player. So I suspect he'll slip straight back in, to be honest. I'd be surprised if there's any teething issues there at all. I get the impression from him he never really stopped. His love of football back home clearly never left him. In fact, it was probably weighing on his mind for quite a long time. So if I had to put my money on it, I'd say he's going to slide right back into that Tyrone team and have immediate impact.
Jim Stein's made 264 AFL appearances. Is that a target? Is that a real thing in your head?
Not really, no, but 200 wasn't either. My only motivating factor right now is the Premiership, and that's kind of been the sole focus for me for a few years since I got to Geelong. It's my 4th season at Geelong, and that's kind of the reason I came here, because they had been a really strong organisation for a long, long time before this, and I wanted to finish my career at a club that could maybe win one. So yeah, it would be nice to get there. I'd love to get as close to him as I possibly could, but that's not really the goal, if I'm perfectly honest.
We were doing some research for this and came across a comment from Kieran Lillis, which I think it might be behind you saying you don't think that those people who say talent is a myth are correct, because it turns out you were pretty talented. He said when we were growing up, whether we were in the snooker hall in Portlaoise, out in the back garden where he had a bit of a tennis court, or we were out on the green playing knockabouts, he would school us in every discipline. So obviously this stuff comes a bit naturally to you, Zach.
Slightly charitable, I would have thought, Lillis there. Yeah, I've always been very sporty. There's no doubt about that. So I am lucky that I've landed myself on the career path I have. But look, talent's not a myth. People say it's all work rate, and well, it's not. You have to still be pretty good. But if you can couple that with the right kind of mindset, you can go places. So yeah, he had me covered in plenty of sports, Lillis did. But yeah, it was nice of him to say.
Is he onto something there when he talks about playing multiple disciplines? Does that help you kind of being chameleon-like in going from Gaelic football to AFL seamlessly?
Yeah, potentially. But I mean, the biggest sort of commonality I have in terms of my background and AFL is GAA. So if I was only going to be decent at one thing, it would have been GAA, because the skill set is reasonably similar. So GAA is a lot quicker, is the big difference, but the hand-eye, the speed, the ball movement, all that stuff's very transferable. So, but yeah, you're right. I guess if you can be good at a few sports, that has to help.
Look, Zach, I made the point, it is one of the great Irish international sports careers. To be 200 not out is a fairly phenomenal achievement. What's the situation with the rest of the season? How curtailed is actually the end of the season going to be? Is it normal? Are all the same structures still in place?
Yeah, well, our season got shortened, so it used to be 22 games in the season and then go into like a knockout finals campaign. It's 17 games now, and we're playing the last game this weekend, and then it's into a traditional finals campaign from there. So we've been in a hub for 12 weeks now, or 11 weeks, I think. So basically we spent, a month over in Perth, and we're in Gold Coast now, and this is basically where every team in the AFL is based, in Gold Coast at the minute. And last round this weekend, and then we're into the real stuff, into the finals campaign. So no crowds, same as back home, same sort of limitations you've seen put on most sports around the world. But we've gotten the season away, which was not always a guarantee. So pretty grateful, really, for the work that's been done.
And you were also pictured on Instagram of meeting the family again after 11 weeks away. Was that just a brief kind of moment, or are they now back in with you as well?
No, they're here now, yeah. So the problem was, initially we were only supposed to go away for a month, but then things worsened in Victoria, where Melbourne is. So we couldn't go back. We had to stay travelling, and for your families to come up, they have to quarantine for a couple of weeks as well before you can see them. So it ended up being, as you said, it was 11 weeks without seeing my kids, which was the biggest challenge easily out of everything we've done this season. But again, we've been looked after fairly well. I'd be hesitant to complain, but the last couple of weeks before I got to see them was tough. So it was nice for them to be here, and fingers crossed everything goes well for us this year, and they'll be there to see it now, which is, again, that wasn't always on the card, so very grateful.
Listen, it's been great talking to you, Zach. Continued success, and I've no doubt that whatever happens, defences in Ireland, or forwards in Ireland, whenever you make it back to play for Laois, eventually are going to be terrorised. Thanks, man.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's Zach Tuohy there with an amazing story. To go from being a teenager in Portlaoise to somebody who's put together 200 professional games in the AFL. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us 087 180 180. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
So I'll start with OTBsports.com. John Duggan's column is up. Pat Smullen showed us the qualities of bravery, dignity and class, and Pat Smullen refused to bend. That was Dermot Well leading the tributes last night on Off the Ball. Callum Robinson scored for West Brom to put them into the Carabao Cup third round, and Ian Madigan saying Brian O'Driscoll's analysis was spot on, talking about taking criticism. Miguel Delaney reckons Gareth Bale is still capable of 10 to 15 match-winning moments a season, which would put him somewhat ahead of Alexis Sanchez. Right, the Irish Examiner, Byrne, Rovers ready to rattle Zlatan and Milan's faded grandeur is the headline on that, and John Fogarty's done the cost of an average training session, digging deep for success, €4,300 per training session is a piece, and a great piece, very thoughtful piece from Tommy Martin. It might be up to Ireland's men to ensure women get equal slice of the pie, and so he's got some interesting figures here. So recently, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Brazil, England, and that's it, are paying their men's and women's international soccer teams the same. The USA are currently suing. That's a massive, long-running campaign that we've covered on the show with Hope Solo a couple of times in the past. Currently, the men get around, Ireland men get around €2,000 for a competitive game and about $1,000 for a friendly. The women's team get €250 per game. So to equalise, it would cost about 40 grand a year. Obviously, the FAI don't have that much money. Tommy's idea is, why don't the men pool their money with the women and split it 50-50? Given the men are really rich and could afford to do it. Tommy Martin might be onto something here. The rest of the papers for you. The Gareth Bale transfer saga and Australia beating England in the one-day international is the back of all of the England stories, so they're all exactly the same. Bale on verge of Spurs as Dele Alli faces the exit. England falter at the very last, and they also have the Bale on cusp of returning, so I won't do any more of those English papers for you. The Irish Daily Mail, Bale in the bag, Spurs seal deal for Real star, but Ali may go, and they also have a picture of the jockeys guard of honour for special Smullen. Leinster handed incentive of home semi-final in the Champions Cup. We'll talk about that maybe with Cian Tracey in just a moment. The Irish Daily Mirror this morning, Bale with the pound sign instead of the E if you're listening to us on the radio. But then tab of the morning to you is AC/DC, AC Milan, it's black and red. Rovers boss Bradley planning to rock Milan, roll them over and leave the Serie A giants thunderstruck. Did he actually mention AC/DC? I can't find it, but look, I like it. He might have just said we can rock them. No, there you go. They must have mentioned them because it's in the back of the Sun as well. AC/DC. Bradley, we've got the power to pull off a shock. You're just giggling away in the background there, Eoin.
I like it a lot, you know. The voltage puns, music puns, the lot, with such an amazing opportunity there. Is there something with the DC initials potentially, which take it to a whole new level of appropriate? I'm not so sure.
And then the back of the Star is Rovers return. Burn jokes. Dublin pubs must reopen if Hoops win. Do you know what the Rovers return is, Eoin?
Yeah.
Do you?
Of course I do. I mean, I'm familiar with Coronation Street.
Okay. Final Curragh journey for Pat, and there's a picture of people joining the Guard of Honour around the entrance to the Curragh yesterday as the hearse carrying Pat Smullen's body down to his home in Offaly from St Vincent's Hospital made a detour yesterday, a very poignant moment outside the Curragh, the scene of many of his greatest triumphs. And Jose's plans for Gareth Bale, front cover of the Racing Post today. Obviously, they'd gone to print before the news broke yesterday. And a racing great whose legacy will endure on and off the track. Pat Smullen, 1977 to 2020. Far too young. The Herald, Burn on the attack. Jack, they'll have to open the pubs if we beat Milan. And Cronin is pushing for start. This is Cian Tracey's story, so we'll talk to him in a couple of minutes about that. It's also on the back of the Irish Independent there. Cronin in line for surprise recall as Cullen looks to roll out the big guns, and Burn confident Rovers can shock Milan Stars. Did I do everything? No, I missed the Irish Times. So you hear in the Irish Times the preview of the US Open, which gets underway today. We talked about it yesterday with John Duggan. Winged foot set to test mental battle of all. They're predicting a 3 or 4 over par. We'll get to the Irishman who lives on the side of the course a little bit later on as well, and there's a picture of Zlatan. It's a real pity there's no crowds tonight on. It is a real pity.
It would have been unbelievable. It would have been right up there as one of the great atmospheres you would have thought. So, they'll have to give some sort of special dispensation or else bust the entire team to Kildare or something for Monday night when pubs reopen in places that aren't called Dublin, and bust them back safely if they get the business done tonight. Yeah,
Bray, whatever. The dart on the dart line. Can you get the Laois and then get the dart all the way to somewhere? You probably can.
Get the Benga dart to the Bray or something like that. We should come back to the Irish Examiner. 2 good pieces there. We can maybe chat about Tommy Martin's piece in a moment. But just another thing to just mention this morning is John Fogarty's piece in the Irish Examiner. And I guess we've had a couple of these pieces over the last few years where good journalism kind of underlines just how incredible the inter-county spending really is. Sometimes you just need to see it in black and white here, which is how John Fogarty has done it. He's spoken to a number of county treasurers, and the pre-pandemic cost of a training session for a leading county team is ranging between $4,000 and $5,000 for one training session for an inter-county team. That is the cost. That is what the GAA is up against in terms of getting this inter-county championship up and running. Mileage is the big thing that costs them a lot. So, of course, your big cities, Dublin in particular, probably wouldn't have the same type of costs as a Mayo would have. So, last year alone, Mayo spent €927,000 for on inter-county travel expenses, with 696 grand of that ascribed to the senior men's footballers. So, we've had pieces on the show done in the past about some of them training sessions being based in Dublin, some of them being based in the west of Ireland, and sometimes they meet halfway and they do a Midlands training session. A Midlands training session to facilitate those Mayo players in the capital goals apiece could add as much as €2,500 to the cost of that session, which is just an extraordinary number. You've got catering coming in at almost 400 grand, sports gear costing almost 300 grand, and medical expenses at just under 90 grand. So, how Mayo managed to pull this off this year in the current climate is one hell of an undertaking. Of course, they're not the only ones. Kerry's are through the roof. 1.3 million they spent on their teams last year. Cork's travel expenses were 486 grand. Dublin spent 1.3 million on their teams as well, with 87 grand on match expenses. Now, what you hope is that it might be alleviated a little bit by the fact that potentially players who are working from home and who play inter-county football or hurling have relocated to home, and those Midlands training sessions might not be as appropriate as they would be last year. But this bailout that a lot of the GAA are going to depend on over the next little while is just underlined by this piece. And he quotes Kevin McStay. When he was Roscommon manager 3 years ago, he said he would struggle to cut his weekly budget of 15 grand. This isn't for free. This volunteer sport we love and will watch hopefully every week for this winter. It comes at a massive price, and there is a huge question about whether or not the organisation can afford it.
Yeah. Look, it is a really interesting conversation about that whole dynamic of funding and where the money comes from, and what is the available source of revenue. Obviously, streaming is going to be very interesting to see what decision they make on showing every game, and are the games that wouldn't have had coverage going to be streamed behind a paywall, and who's generating that? Is it Sky? Is it RTE Go? Is it RTE through GA Go? Or is everything just going to be on the Sky platform and on the RTE platform, because they were the existing TV deals? So it'll be very interesting to see exactly how that all plays out over the next while. We're speaking with the current Roscommon manager on the show, Anthony Cunningham, and he was talking about, if players aren't getting mileage this year to come back from Dublin, some of them, he didn't say that, but there was certainly some players are probably going to decide that actually, this is an interesting time, a little bit of risk involved. Do I not go back? Do I have training sessions over Zoom? There are a lot of things to be worked out here, and a blanket cut to mileage, for example, which is the easiest thing, obviously, because you can see exactly how much that figure is going to generate, might not be the best solution for everybody. So plenty for them to work out. We've got 30 seconds here on the women's national team getting paid the same as the men's national team. Eoin, if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, it's a really good piece by Tommy Martin this morning. I guess it's about checking privilege as much as anything else. The fact that, the man sitting on his couch at the weekend, it's an absolute luxury, even though they may not realise that. And it's, as ever, a really funny piece, but it also gets into, as you mentioned, a really good idea here, which, imagine if this actually grows legs. I can't imagine too many people will be against it who are actually involved. The men's players who earn so much on a weekly basis by playing predominantly in England, to take a slight cut to actually make parity with themselves in the women's team. It can't possibly not make sense, can it? The output for the national team is exactly the same.
He had a killer line about we love the men despite the fact they didn't stand up when they should have, when the women's team needed their help. I kind of had forgotten that, and it was an under talked about part of that whole story, that there wasn't the men are going on strike unless the women actually get their own tracksuits. That didn't happen. They didn't, as far as I remember. There weren't too many of the men's team who were like, when they were asked about it, they're like, oh yeah, of course they should be treated well. But there was no here, listen, let's get together and get out there and support them. Which doesn't really, doesn't really reflect very well on that group. So we've got to go back and see exactly who said what in detail. But there was no mass outpouring, no WhatsApp group going, it seems, with right, let's get out there and help the women's team. Right, it's 8:37 though. We've got to move on because there's plenty more to come on the show this morning. We're going to do Deal or No Deal. We're going to speak with Stephen Doyle about the Zlatan appearance for AC Milan at Tallaght tonight against Shamrock Rovers, and we'll also bring you part 3 of our interview with Bernard Brogan, where we talk about his relationship with Pat Gilroy, which was tempestuous enough at the very start, as Pat Gilroy broke him down and turned him into the Footballer of the Year ultimately. But that's all after we speak with Cian Tracey of the Irish Independent about the rugby this weekend. Cian, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hi lads, how are you?
I just want to start by saying it's a magnificent lockdown beard, and congratulations on committing to it and not shaving it off like everybody else has done.
Well, I have to admit now I did, so it's on its second coming, but it's a big compliment coming from you, Ger. Thank you. You've been known to sport a good beard too, Eoin.
Thank you, Cian. Yeah, it's magnificent. Second.
You're being too nice. His beard has never been anywhere near as impressive as that, Cian.
I'm trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah. We know what you're doing. Damning with faint praise. Sean Cronin, is Sean Cronin really going to start for Leinster at the weekend?
Well, that's what I'm hearing. It's a bit left field, all right. But yeah, look, the line out for Leinster has been a major concern post lockdown. You look last weekend, they lost 4 of their own lineouts. It's strange because Sean Cronin has never really been known for his lineout throwing. We think back to his first Six Nations start in 2019 in Rome. God, it feels like so long ago now at this stage, and it didn't go quite well. We've always kind of associated Cronin with his work around the park. So yeah, it would be a bit of a left field call. I think it would also be fairly harsh on Ronan Kelleher. For all that the lineout was very poor last week, I didn't by any means think it was solely his fault. You could see that it was a breakdown in communication. Like sometimes the players weren't getting lifted in the air, but I think that does create a bit of panic. And Kelleher is still very young, and I thought he had a very good game around the park. But I suppose a bit like a golfer, and if he gets the yips over putting, you know, we've seen it over the years with Rory Best more than once. So I think what Leinster ended up doing against Ulster was really simplifying the line out and trying to go to the front to Devin Toner. Now, that's all well and good, but if you're going up against someone like Maro Itoje, he'll just pick that off. So, yeah, so what I'm hearing is Leinster absolutely considering to go with Cronin this week, as much of a surprise as it would be.
Yeah, and it'll be an amazing comeback, really, from Cronin's perspective as well, to force his way back in. Because, you know, like all of these selection issues, when a young player comes in, the fan base wants to see the young player do well. The international selectors want to see, let's see a little bit more here, especially in the big game, like the game against Saracens. So there must be a little bit of pressure to stick with Kelleher and to give him the opportunity, like they stuck with Jordan Larmour after his shaky enough first performance against Munster.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was going to mention that as well. It's like Leo Cullen has stuck by his young guys, but I don't think we can question or doubt any selection calls that Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster make. You look at what they've done over the last couple of years, they've really managed to juggle their squad really well. I guess it's even more surprising because like Sean Cronin wasn't even on the bench for the final last week. It was James Tracey. But look, Sean Cronin is massively experienced. What is he, 34 now? If he gets a chance, he'll still feel like he has a lot to prove. But I don't think, wouldn't be writing Ronan Kelleher off by any means. And, you know, who knows, he might end up starting. It's certainly what I'm hearing. But yeah, I just think if you're going to simplify the line out against that Saracens beast, it's a problem, you know. Leinster really simplified it, and you even if you go back to the first Munster game post lockdown, we could see what Peter O'Mahony, the damage he caused to that, and also a very good line out defender. And Maro Itoje is in a similar vein to that. Leo Cullen spoke about it after the defeat last week, that it was a major concern, because look, like, you're almost picking holes because Leinster have been so good since they've come back. Like, they haven't fired on all cylinders. The set piece has been a little bit of a struggle. We haven't probably seen what they're really capable of in attack yet. But I think you've got to admire maybe Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster for sort of going, okay, this is a problem that we have to fix, because even without George Cruz, who won't be playing for Saracens this weekend, and Will Skelton, like, those guys caused a lot of damage in Newcastle in the final last year, but they're still a very dangerous outfit. And like I keep saying, like with Maro Itoje, if Ronan Kelleher is looking down the line and has any doubts at all and he sees Maro Itoje, I think that could be a bit of trouble. So yeah, it'll be a tough blow for him though, because there's no doubt that he is kind of, you know, the one that Ireland are looking at to be their next first choice hooker. But if he's not doing it, then maybe we can look back at it and say it was good management from Leo Cullen to take him out of the fire. I guess we'll have to wait and see when the team is being now named midday tomorrow, so we'll have to see then.
Tell me a little bit about this Will Connors selection. That's the other kind of heavily speculated. Is this just the basis that Will Connors is physically a bit of a beast, and we understand that this game is going to be an absolute arm wrestle, and that having Josh van der Flier in reserve all of a sudden changes the complexity of that game? Because van der Flier was unbelievable when he got back in the team.
Yeah, he was, but I'm not sure if he could have done much more to force the issue, to be honest. I think after the job that Will Connors did against Ulster a couple of weeks ago on Stuart McCloskey and Marcel Coetzee, and then he backed it up by doing the same against CJ Stander and Damien Dialende. Like, they're four of the biggest ball carriers in world rugby, let alone in the Pro 14. So, and it's not like kind of Will Connors has come from anywhere. He's played a lot of games, you know, pre-lockdown as well. He's been really good. He's a guy who's kind of only coming into our consciousness in the last year because, you know, he had an ACL injury in the 2018-19 season, which basically took him out for a year. He missed out in 2016. He was on the same Irish under-20s team as James Ryan, Jacob Stockdale, Andrew Porter. We all know that one that got to the World Cup final. He missed out on that with an ankle injury. So he has been kind of really unlucky with injuries, and I think we probably would have seen more of him if he had got that bit of run of luck. But yeah, I think Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster have lined, like I mentioned, those two games, they've lined Will Connors up to do a job, I think, on Billy Vunipola after seeing what he did, and particularly Coetzee and CJ Stander. I think he's ready made for it. It's very harsh on Josh van der Flier, you'd have to say. I agree with you, he was outstanding last week, and while he may not give you that chop tackling threat that Will Connors has perfected, like, he just gives you so much line speed. He even started carrying the ball a bit more last week, which was great to see. But Yeah, Connors, I think I'd be stunned if Connors doesn't start this weekend. I think even him starting on the bench last week was a real indication that he was going to come into the side last week. And like I said, I don't think Van der Fleer could have done much more to force the issue, but I think they really have Connors in mind to do a job of Billy Vunipola.
It's impossible sometimes, Cian, to look at Leinster in isolation from Ireland at large, especially this weekend when you think about some of the problems Ireland have had against the likes of Vunipola and England in general over the last 18 months or so. Is Connors in some way a little bit of an answer to that chop tackle technique? Is that something we've been missing at national level now?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think every back row, your likes of Josh Van der Fleer, that's their aim, is to take these guys low. But it's a real serious skill. I mean, you look at someone like Dan Lydiot is the obvious one who perfected the art of the chop tackle over the years. Even kind of more recently, Sam Underhill is very good at it as well. So it's something that Will Connors has worked on a lot. I know Hugh Hogan is probably someone who doesn't really get mentioned a huge amount. He's Leinster's contact skills coach, and a real fancy title, but the work that he does, and a lot of it is like with the likes of Will Connors, working on that chop tackle technique. And this isn't something that has happened overnight for him. He's not the biggest. If you look at him, he's not the biggest back row. Even if you compare him to someone like Sam Underhill, he's definitely given up a good few kg to him. So I guess he's looking at it going, okay, my strength has got to be something else, and it's his chop tackling technique. And you're right, Owen, Ireland have struggled so badly. It's not just against England. You go back to the World Cup and you look at the job that the All Blacks did in that quarter final, and yeah, it is something that they've been looking at. I think it was no surprise that Andy Farrell had Will Connors in as a development player in his initial Six Nations squad, and then he actually kept him on as well. By all accounts, he's been massively impressive in Ireland camp as well. And I think if the Six Nations had gone ahead, we probably would have seen him get capped, potentially off the bench in that Italy game. So yeah, you're right. If you're looking at Leinster, everything kind of goes through the prism of what's going on in Ireland. And I made this point a couple of weeks ago when I was on with John Duggan. He was asking about what the Irish back row could be when we come back. But if you're starting in the Leinster back row, there's a very, very good chance you're going to be starting in the Ireland back row. That's just the way it is. So if you think that if Will Connors finishes this season, which he looks like he will, as Leinster's first choice open side, then naturally he's going to be right in the frame to not just be in the Ireland squad, but to be starting, I think, when Ireland come back.
Just checking their ages there, they're almost exactly the same age, Underhill and Connors. So
yeah, they were the same World Cup year, but Underhill ended up playing, obviously, for the under-20s, but Will Connors missed it. So like I said, if Connors had been on that team, he probably would have been one who, we would have spoken about, like James Ryan, Porter, Stockdale, Max Deegan, all these guys. But because he missed out, it seems like he's a bit of a new face on the scene. But you're right, Ger, he's 24, he has been around for a while. He's just been a bit unlucky with injury.
The one thing about this game is obviously Saracens have literally nothing else to play for, and they are a team still laden with superstars. If Owen Farrell was playing, the 9-point spread in this game would be absolutely ludicrous. I still think it's kind of ludicrous. I think it's a much more close game, given that Leinster were dominated by this Saracens team. You mentioned already the two big players missing from the pack, but they have other superstars who you would expect, if they wanted to, would play for the Lions next year.
Yeah, they do. I think they're if we go with the team that we expect might start, I think they could be missing 5 or 7 maybe starters from that team from last year. Now they do still have strength and depth, but it will be a bit different. Mako Vunipola, they Saracens have said this week, is going to start. Now, he hasn't played since August 15th, which I think was Saracens' first game back. Richard Wigglesworth is in the same boat, but I know there's kind of rumblings from what you hear that maybe Mako Vunipola might not make it, and even he might be on the bench. So we'll have to wait and see about that as well, because if he's out of the picture as well, and the bookies usually know some things that maybe we all don't know, but if Mako Vunipola doesn't start as well, then that's another major weapon. And even if he does, he hasn't played since August 15th. And look, Saracens are putting obviously all their eggs in this basket, but they've been really noisy this week in the press. You saw Alex Sanderson, their assistant coach, coming out after the game last week and saying, "Oh, we've got a few things up our sleeves. Leinster will be nervous, and things like this." And while they are the last team to beat Leinster, I think they're putting a lot of stock in just turning up this weekend and turning it on. We all know they're capable of it, but if you look at what Leinster have done over the last few weeks, they've built really slowly. They've been able to manage their resources. Like, I mean, resting Johnny Sexton for a Pro 14 final and Luke McGrath as well. Like, I mean, like, it was a brave decision, but it was one that really paid off. So I don't know. I think I would still fancy Leinster purely because, like, I don't like that word battle hardened, but like they have much more minutes under their belt, and like the games that Saracens have been playing, even the ones that their big guns have been playing, have been utterly meaningless in the Premiership. So it's very hard to kind of read anything into that. And even some of their games that they've played, they were playing against second teams. The Premiership is just a bit of a basket case at the moment because lots of the results are skewed. So while there's no doubt it's a major concern because what Saracens will bring is like nothing that Ulster and Munster will have brought in the games that Leinster have played post-lockdown. I still think it's all well and good Saracens saying that they've been eyeing up Leinster from a long way out, because Leinster have been doing the exact same. Like I said, resting Johnny Sexton for a Pro 14 final. Like, there's no way that happens if the Saracens game isn't coming this week. And the players might not have been doing a huge amount of work, whereas Saracens probably were doing a lot of work in Leinster. There's no doubt that Stuart Lancaster and Leo Cullen have been forensically analysing Saracens for months. Like, you think of all the time they had in lockdown, like they always knew this game was looming large, and I think they would have backed themselves. Like, we've seen what they've done in the Pro 14 with their second string team, if that's what you want to call it, in that Ulster game in particular. I mean, it was always going to take a massive upset for them not to win the Pro 14. The Champions Cup is the one they want. The players openly speak about wanting to add the fifth star to that jersey, so I think they'll be gunning for Saracens just as much, even to avenge the final defeat last year.
All right, Cian, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
It's Cian Tracey there from the Irish Independent, giving us some thoughts about what's going to happen in that game this weekend between Leinster and Saracens. You can hear the Ulster-Toulouse game live on Sunday, and then we'll have Liverpool against Chelsea live for you also on Sunday. So that is a proper Super Sunday coming your way here on Off the Ball. A reminder, of course, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. A busy second hour of the show coming your way. It's 8:51, and we have Bernard Brogan. We have an interview with Phil Healy and her coach about her plans in what is now officially inside the 12 months of what is, we hope, going to be an Olympic Games in Tokyo next year. But I want you to stay tuned to the ad break as well, because our latest Cadbury FC special goes live today on all our social channels at 2 o'clock. Loads of Arsenal nostalgia with two sensational guests, Ian Wright and Sol Campbell. We'll get the guys' thoughts on the Black Lives Matter movement. We'll also talk about the fact that black managers get less opportunities in football, the rivalry between Arsenal and Man United, the infamous tunnel match, and Ian Wright's newfound friendship with fellow TV pundit Roy Keane. Keep an eye out for the teaser clip coming during the ad break. When we return from the ads, we're going to hear from Ireland's fastest woman, Phil Healy. Phil and her coach, Shane McCormack, who's also the speed and agility coach with the Tipperary hurlers, sat down with Sheahan for OTB Sports. Back in a minute.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Brady and Belichick have been at the forefront of the credit in New England for the last 20 years.
OTB's American Football Show, The Snap on OTB Sports Radio.
Burrow very much thrown in the deep end. He seems to have the correct temperament. I've never been totally won over by his actual talent, to be honest.
Keep updated with American football on OTB. Tune into The Snap every Friday on OTB Sports Radio.
Ian, you seem to really enjoy the dynamic when yourself and Roy will be on television together, whether it's at World Cups or covering European Championships, and you seem to play off each other quite well.
Well, the thing is, it's not even a case of you playing off each other. Roy says what he says, and then you either disagree with it or you agree with it. But if you disagree, then you know that you're going into an area where you don't know what's coming next. And what I love about it is that I'm never far away from bursting out and laughing, and he's not neither. You know, of course, he's a serious guy, and he always says to me before we go on, right, don't give me none of that banter bollocks, man. I'm here to talk serious football. And so, you know what I mean? I'm already getting ready to laugh and smile with him. But, like, he never says anything on there for effect. He never says anything when he's talking about football for effect. When he says something, I remember a little while back, he said something about David De Gea and Harry Maguire. He meant that. So I think that people get confused with, him saying something like that and, he meant that. So when you know Roy Keane, you take that for what it is, because he probably would be swinging. He's probably swinging. But for me and Roy now, honestly, it's just like, when they say, right, it's you and Roy Keane, instantly excited because we have a great day, and then we go on the box, and he'll be talking normally, but he literally goes, and he literally turns it to another person. As soon as the music for the intro is finished, and it's not like he's switching something, it's just that's what he is. I'm here to speak about football, and I'm serious. I'm here to talk serious stuff. And I will tell you exactly what I'm telling you, and I mean exactly what I'm telling you. I don't have as much fun on the television, like obviously Sheahan and Lineker, magnificent. But when I'm on with Roy, I can feel there's butterflies in my stomach because you don't know what's coming.
Off the ball.
The old line of "we don't have the players" is being trotted out once again, and you would have heard that a lot during the latter stages of your Ireland career, that the players simply aren't there.
No, I think it's crap that we don't have the players. It's such an easy thing to say. Our own managers have been saying it the last few years when things don't go their way. Did Finland have the players the other night? Did Bulgaria? What's the difference between any of our players? Most of our players, the majority are either playing the Premier League or top championship clubs. We have the players.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
All right, I'm delighted to be joined on the line now by EBS ambassadors, Irish sprinter Phil Healy and indeed her coach Shane McCormack, following the final call for nominations for the 2020 Federation of Irish Sport Volunteers in Sport Awards. This is, of course, supported by EBS. The awards will see EBS and the Federation of Irish Sport hero the work of volunteers from around the country who go above and beyond every day to ensure that sport and physical activity take place in Ireland. These volunteers dedicate some 37.2 million hours of volunteering across the country's 13,000 plus sports clubs and associations every year. The Federation of Irish Sport and EBS want to recognise that dedication and passion by heroing these volunteers at an awards ceremony this November. So to nominate an everyday hero, you can simply visit www.volunteersinsport.ie, and nominations can be made by a club, an individual, or indeed a sporting body, and they will close on September 25th. So we decided we'd get a coach and athlete combo on with us. So we've got Phil Healy, the Irish sprinter, and our coach Shane McCormack. You're both very welcome. Thanks for taking the call. Phil, is this a strange dynamic for you, having an interview with your coach watching on? Is this like a footballer doing an interview with their coach?
Yeah, well, we've had plenty of interviews together, but it is like to share it. We have a very close relationship on what we share, and obviously when you're working so closely to get the performance, you work really closely with your coach and stuff like that. So it is a good opportunity for Shane to share his insights and what he has done to get the performances from me.
A lot of athletes have spoken about motivation over lockdown, and I guess people can go one of two ways over the last 6 months or so. So for you, the last 6 months, I know you had been busy beforehand doing college work and completing a master's. So has motivation for you in terms of track work been stronger than ever, or a little bit lacking, or how have you found the last 6 months?
Yeah, so right from the beginning, say in the start of March, so even go back further, so even when we're at indoor season, so January, February, Shane was obviously well ahead with coronavirus and looking at what way things were going in different trends across Europe and across the world. And he said before our national championships the last weekend in February, where we were racing indoors, he said there's a high chance that this is your last race of the season. So we were like, oh no, things will definitely go ahead. And as the athlete, you just want to believe that they will go ahead. But it was a week later, Shane set up that I would move into Curracloe Holiday Villas, where I was in isolation there. He put a gym into the house, and this was a precaution, as in if everything shut down, that I would have the opportunity to continue training, because at that point Olympics was still ahead, still going ahead. So as the athlete, you need to continue training, and I would obviously adapt with doing sessions on the beach, in the forest, on the hills around. And then 2 weeks again later after that, the restrictions came in with the travel restrictions. So I moved out of Curracloe. I actually moved into Shane's house from the first week in April. His wife is a Montessori school right next door, so that was transformed into a gym. WIT Arena, or gym here in Waterford, gave us a walk bike so I could continue that element of training. So when the Olympics was cancelled, obviously that is a bit deflating, but you're waiting for it to be cancelled, but it's not coming as a shock. But what it's actually done is a bit final as such. But as I said to Shane one day, I don't want to be going to the Olympics. I don't want to have been qualified for the Olympics. That didn't happen. So as the athlete, you have to pick yourself back up and continue training. The intensity was taken out of it for us because as such there was nothing on at that point, and there's no point training 110% for nothing at the end of it as such. But it gave us a window of opportunity to work on other things, to build different areas where we wouldn't have had that opportunity if we did have races in place. So yeah, as the motivation, like there was never a point where I was like, no, I'm not going to training or different things like that. We always had the glimmer of hope that nationals would go ahead, whether it was September or whether it was the end of August. So to have that was a great opportunity as athletes to go out and run, because at the end of the day, our job is to go out and perform. I am a student. I've finished my master's as well 2 weeks ago. So, but I'm an athlete. I am a student. I am an athlete. So it is my job to go and perform. So it was a great to have national championships go ahead, and it was a credit to all that was involved in organising and the coaches to get the athletes out there on the day as well.
Well, congrats on the Masters and congrats on the performance of those nationals as well. Shane, with your wife's Montessori being turned into a gym, we can't question your commitment to the cause. But for people maybe not familiar with your background, I know you've been involved with the Tipperary hurlers in the last couple of years. So maybe explain to people how you came about getting involved in athletics and coaching in general.
Yeah, so I was an athlete myself from the age of 7 up, and I wouldn't say I had the talent that Phil had, but I definitely had a drive and a want to be, the best that I could be as an athlete. Unfortunately or fortunately, one door closed, another opens. I got a bad injury in my first year in college in UL, so that kind of that forced me to first of all stop competing in athletics. I played a little bit, I played Gaelic the whole way up as well, but after college, I moved back to Wexford and I got back involved with my local club in Wexford, and there was a couple of talented athletes, and namely a young guy called David Hines who went on to become the national 100-meter champion in 2013 with me, and we he was just a guy he was 17 at the time and just had an unbelievable talent, and I just got involved with trying to help him and kind of fell into coaching that way, and we had an unbelievable journey together. And sort of when his career started coming to an end, Phil's career was starting. So that's kind of how myself and Phil got together,
I'd seen quotes from you sitting in an airport getting the call from Liam Sheedy, the Tipperary manager, to come on board with the Tip hurlers as speed and agility coach. So, and a quote that I'd read from you: if you can find 1%, that's 10% come All-Ireland final day. So do you adopt similar mindsets, I guess, that you take from the GAA into working with individual athletes like Phil?
100%. So for me, you have to coach what's in front of you, right? And everybody that comes to you is different. Everybody is, genetically different, have their different strengths, their different weaknesses, their, sessions they like, sessions they don't like. And you have to find out what makes them tick. But you can already start with like the big rocks, the big, what's your go-to, your fitness, your strength. And speed tends to kind of come out of those sort of big rocks. If you can make sure somebody is doing the basics and they're physically in good nick, you then can really start making a lot of gains with regards to speed. So, you're always looking for the 1%, but I think the 1% are different. They're always different no matter what your situation,
Phil, I'm curious to get your thoughts as well on the importance of a coach for an individual sport. You get people in sports like golf and tennis and snooker, boxing, who rely on their coach for more than just training, I guess. It's someone to bounce ideas off. It's someone to talk to. How important is a coach for an individual sport like you? I think about golfers as well, who enjoy, playing in the Ryder Cup because they get that team camaraderie and spirit that they don't get when they play those individual tournaments. So how important is having someone like Shane for your career?
Absolutely massive. Like, the sport is hard enough as it is, and like when you have that individual element, it makes it harder again at times, and everyone just focuses on the result, but they don't see what actually goes on behind the picture. So like, even say last year alone, like I broke my foot in April and Shane was there helping me right through. I was taken away, like I wasn't training with my training partners because I wasn't running. Obviously we could overlap in the gym and stuff like that, but that's a change in dynamic for the athlete. But Shane stepped in and he did some of the sessions with me. He was always there. It's a testing time for the athlete, but like he was there to support me in every way. And that goes through right through the year. Every athlete has their own like difficulties and different issues, and it can be like outside of training, but obviously if there's different things that comes into training. So if it is so important for the coach to know the athlete and the athlete to know the coach, and Shane has been there, whether it's things that I need to sort through college, and I made the move from nursing into the IT side of things, and Shane was there to support me with that and like to help me with my training while I was making the move, or even when I was in nursing, like when I was doing night shifts, I was doing 12-hour shifts back to back, and Shane was there to support me in that and structure my training around that. So yeah, regardless of the sport, it's that support network around you that is a massive element, because I might be the one that goes out there and performs on the day, but like it takes a team, and the coach is the one that's there every single day and sees exactly what works and what doesn't work, and the difficulties that have been there and the highs as well to get to that point. So they're the ones that live the highs and lows throughout the time.
We're talking about the importance of coaches here today, but for you, Phil, growing up, I mean, I know you would have played different sports, camogie and soccer and Gaelic football growing up, but you had the influence as well of your older sister, Joan, who's a couple of years older than you. So when you're sitting watching her as a kid, you know, probably winning community games, medals and that sort of thing, how big a motivating factor and an encouragement is that to see an older sibling, I guess, getting involved in sport early on?
Absolutely massive. Like, and she led the way for me, and like I wasn't making finals and I wasn't like getting to All Irelands, and she was getting to all the major championships. So as such, I was living in her shadow. But I stuck with the sport, and like my coach at the time said, maybe look, athletics mightn't be the sport for you and try basketball instead. But like an awful lot of people at that age are focused on the winning instead of actually enjoying the sport. Like, you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be like the best at the sport, but if you enjoy it and if you enjoy the outlet, that's what it's important. And people need to take a lot more from that, and like that comes back down to participation. Like, people leave a sport because they don't feel that they're doing well enough in it, or they're not winning and things like that. But I made my breakthrough when I was like, say, 5th year, 6th year, 17, 18. Like, you don't have to be like a natural, like unbelievable talent so young. And just people need to realize that it's about having fun and take away from that winning culture. But absolutely, Joan was a massive role that led the way for me, and then I've supported her, say, when she's have had more difficult times. And say even recently, like, she wasn't going to race national championships, but I gave her my advice, and like as such, I didn't want her to be like a soft athlete as such and pack it in just after one bad race. Like, you just pick yourself back up. Everyone has bad races, and she came out and she got third, and that national medal will always be with her.
Excellent. Shane, from talking about athletes like Phil when they grow up and bring those habits from younger training with them, how tough is it in athletics to get rid of bad habits in athletes? Is it the type of sport where someone needs that innate natural talent, or can it be trained?
No, you definitely you have to bring something, right? You have to. Depends, right? It depends on what your aspirations are and how you know, I suppose genetically talented you are, right? But then every now and again somebody has an X factor which supersedes, I suppose, maybe the ability that they're born with. So for me, like, Phil has a brilliant ability to compete at her best when needed. She can always find something, regardless of the shape she may be in at the time. There's always an extra 3 or 4% that she can bring on a race day. So I don't look for that in training. I just know it's going to be there. But with regards to so there's talent, and then there's, you know, I suppose your mental strength. But then there are bad habits. Like, you know, kids grow up, like Phil alluded to, like, you know, you grow up thinking that winning is the be all and the end all. So then winning sort of clouds your judgment when you go to do a season, right? So next week you start getting disappointed with, you know, races that are early in the season, which are, you know, not necessarily really important, but they're good. You know, they're there to train, or sorry, to execute maybe a certain race pattern. Or so then if the athlete starts getting, you know, if the athlete stops focusing on the process, then, you know, by the time you get to the big races, you've lost months. So it's hard to. And Phil will agree with me here. Like, we had to work on that at the start, that you had to just trust the process a little bit. And And I think that's one thing that in Ireland maybe athletes don't, to focus too much on every race needing to be perfect. Because depending on the time of the year, you're not going to be in shape, or you're going to be down in a hole a little bit, or, you know, and until you actually taper for a big race. So it's just managing expectations, but then also the athlete owning that. So the coach can help, but athletes, there's a lot of ownership that athletes don't take that they need to take with regards to meeting the coaches halfway. And it's that journey of them learning that to relax a little bit, just chill out a little bit. Don't put the pressure on yourself. This is a journey. This isn't about one summer or one indoor season. This is about this. If you want to stay in this sport, you've got to be thinking, you know, long term. But then the coach has to have the ability to bring that athlete through several years where they are progressing, because ultimately if they don't see progress, they're going to then start asking questions, and then the trust starts getting a little bit frayed. But for me, if a coach is struggling with an athlete, there's always another coach that they can reach out to help. Somebody's already gone through a problem or worked with another athlete. Like, we've got, you know, oceans of experience in Ireland that's untapped. You know what I mean? Like, there's people that have coached, you know, world champions and things like that. So there's tons of experience out there that coaches just need to tap into.
Phil, Shane mentioned the need for mental resilience there, and I've heard you speaking before about, you know, trying to not let nerves get the better of you, because that immediately gives your opponent a one-up. You know, listening to music, knowing the start time of the race, and little things like that, packing your gear the night before, maybe, whatever it is. How important is that aspect to your training? I'm sure you have a sports psychologist as well along with you, but how important for you is being in the right mental frame of mind for a race?
It's absolutely massive, because like, you can train all you want, but if you're not mentally like on top of your game for that race, the training becomes pointless, because when it comes to the race, all the hard work is done. So it's between you and the performance is the mental aspect. So like, each race, each training session is like a dress rehearsal for the next race that you have, and then like, you go to the bigger races. But at the end of the day, as my psychologist always says to me, like, it's just another race with different marketing. Like, you have your lane, you have the other competitors, like, you go out and execute your race. Everyone is going to be nervous. Like, I was nervous for nationals. I was most nervous for an indoor race at the National League, where I knew that it was my first race, so like, there was that unknowns. I did have my evidence in training, but for me, like, I'll believe it more, you know, like when I actually do it in a race. But yeah, it's having those rituals that you always do to keep you prepared, keep you organised, and like that there's nothing going away from, say, the normality that will like knock you off on the day.
Can I just ask finally, we've got the Tokyo Olympics rescheduled to next summer, of course, and we mentioned the Nationals, August 30th, you had that brilliant sprint double in Santry at the National Athletics Championships. So what are your short-term goals, Phil, and how do you view next summer's Olympics? And I guess, what are your hopes and dreams for the next couple of years?
Yeah, so Olympics is definitely the pinnacle of everyone's career that they want to achieve. So like, for me, lying in the spot this year, I need to secure that spot and make sure that I'm going next year, and obviously want to build on the season that I had indoors, where it was a super season, breaking the national record over 200. And then, like, for me, European indoors is on next year again. The 400 meters will be the focus. 400 indoors is one that suits me, so that's definitely one of the goals that will be driving me on through the winter, and then take that form from indoor season into outdoor season, and then hopefully Olympics will go ahead as planned. Whether it will be behind closed doors or not, if it goes ahead, that's an absolute bonus, instead of like another 3 years where people have to wait. But obviously, if it doesn't go ahead, it's taken out of our control, and it's for the safety of all involved.
Well, clearly coaching is something very important to you, Phil, and Sheahan, fair play for all the work you've been doing with Phil as well, making her become Ireland's fastest woman. But I just want to mention those awards again that we mentioned at the top. So those final call for nominations for the 2020 Federation of Irish Sport Volunteers in Sport Awards. This is supported by EBS. So they're not, you can yourself nominate an everyday hero. Simply visit www.volunteersinsport.ie. Nominations can be made by a club, individual or sporting body, and will close, as I said, on September the 25th. So listen, Phil Healy and Cian McCormack, thanks a million for your time, and the best of luck for everything that comes over the next couple of years.
Thanks, Shane.
Right, great stuff there from Phil Healy and her coach, who's obviously also involved with the Tipperary hurlers. If you want to get in touch this morning, 087 9180 180 is the number on WhatsApp, and you can also, of course, just use the hashtag OTBAM. You can watch us live on Twitter @OffTheBall. Now, if you don't have the OTB Sports app already, search OTB Sports in your app store, and you can get it there free, gratis, and for nothing. A reminder, OTBAM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, Paul Callahan has perhaps the most unique house in golf. He lives in Westchester County in New York with a back garden right next to the 10th green at Winged Foot, where the US Open begins this morning. He spent many years travelling to Ireland to play and will be hanging the Irish tricolour proudly in his garden throughout the tournament. He's also been chatting to players in the build-up as they make their way from the 10th green to the 11th tee. So there's the picture of his tricolour. And there's Adam Scott, who was kind of called over by Paul to have a chat, and then it wasn't the only one who just stopped and was like, actually, you know what, I am going to have a chat with you, because there isn't that much media. There's certainly almost no one-on-ones happening that we've been seeing from the press conferences. They've been these kind of fairly pasteurised version of what press conferences should be. So Adam Scott's like, yeah, I'm happy to sit and talk to you about my mate. Was it Jeff Ogilvy he's talking about here, where whenever he was actually en route to his plane, he was like, I'm going to go back and have a party because one of my buddies has just won the US Open. So this is Adam Scott talking with the newest golf journalist in the world, Paul Callahan, from his back garden. So ahead of the tournament, Shane sat down with Paul and had a chat. Here's how they got on.
All right, we are counting down to the 120th US Open golf tournament. It takes place at Winged Foot in New York, starting tomorrow, Thursday. So it's quite an exciting tournament. We're trying to find different ways of approaching this tournament, finding new angles to preview it. And one man with a very unique angle is on the line with me now. It's Paul Callahan, who lives on the course, it's fairly safe to say. He has a house that leads on to the back of the 10th green. Quite an extraordinary view from the house. And Paul, thanks for taking the call. This is one of those calls that you never expect to make. The surroundings you are currently in, describe them for people who don't really know where you live in Westchester.
Well, as you stated, Shane, we're just behind the 10th green on Wingfoot West, and it's a nice, quiet neighborhood of primarily modest homes. And first of all, this is our home where I've raised my family with my wife, Kathy, and we're really blessed because the location affords us, the proximity. I mean, we're only about 150 feet from the edge of the green, from my patio, and it affords us the opportunity to watch, players come through all the time, members, guests. This week, obviously, all the best players from all around the world. So it's a very exciting environment.
So for people who maybe have watched tournaments before at Winged Foot, it's the 10th green, and I guess you can chat to players as well as they take their walk towards the 11th tee box. But was it Ben Hogan had the famous quote, how you're essentially, when you're taking that tee shot, the par 3 at the 10th hole, it's like a 3-iron into someone's bedroom. So that bedroom is right in your house. So is it strange to see your house on the TV like that? And I know you have the Irish flag and the US flag there behind you. So I'm sure we'll get a sight of those on TV this week.
Well, I hope so. As I stated to you at the outset, we put the Irish flag up in honor of Shane Lowry, who's the Open champion, having won last year at Royal Portrush. Just a great accomplishment for an Irishman. Obviously, the tournament had not been held in Ireland since I believe it was 1949. It returned last year to Portrush, which is a fabulous course. I was fortunate enough to play there last fall. So the tricolor is up in honor of Shane. And obviously, we're very proud Americans, and we have our stars and stripes right next to it.
I've seen a couple of interview clips you've done. You're not a journalist, but you do chat to some of the golfers as they get their practice rounds in earlier in the week. So I've seen clips of you chatting to Adam Scott, chatting to James Sugru, our own Mallow man who won the British Amateur, of course, at Portmarnock. What's it like to chat to those players? Are they all in a relaxed mood, or are some more relaxed than others, do you find, this week?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, Shane. Yes. Obviously, we caught Adam Scott in a very good frame of mind on Monday, and he was kind enough to stop and chat with us. He was very convivial and very kind to engage us. And James Shukra, as you stated, he was he's a wonderful young man, and he was also very engaging. Now, you have to understand that as we get closer to the Thursday start, everyone's putting their game faces on, and they're more focused, and they don't want to really be bothered. So even on Monday and Tuesday, there were times when people came by and, they're focused. So, I try to get a brief interview, and they just say they just can't do it, which is totally understandable. But it is really nice when someone does take a moment and chat with us, because we've been sharing it on Instagram, and Matt Adams has picked it up on his show. He's got it on, I think, Facebook or however, maybe YouTube. And so these snippets or brief interviews are getting around, and I think people are really excited to see them. And because, as you say, I'm an amateur journalist, just sort of shooting from the hip, if you will.
Am I right in saying you have one of the golfers competing this week staying at your home?
Yes, we're very fortunate to have Matthew Fitzpatrick and his caddy, Billy Foster, and two other of his staff with him staying at the home. And we're delighted to have them. As you know, Matt is quite a good player. He's a mean putter, just a very keen putter from what I understand when he's on. So that should pay dividends here at Wingfoot, because the greens are extremely beguiling.
I can imagine. And the course itself then, Paul, we've heard a lot in the build-up about the expected winning score of whoever is going to take this trophy this weekend. But Paul McGinley has been speaking, saying he thinks it might be around level par. Previous US Opens there have been something like 5 over, 6 over par. So what are you expecting this week as someone who lives on the course and knows the course really well?
I'm expecting about +4 to be the winning score.
Okay.
Steve Rabideau, who is our golf course director, he and his staff have been working tirelessly for several years. They're the best in the business, and I've never seen any golf course anywhere in the condition that Wingfoot is in right now. The rough is lush and very thick and very long, and the greens are just impeccable. And as the wind continues to blow, and as we have cool nights, they will dry out, and I expect them to even get faster. I believe they're going to roll somewhere just under 13 on the stimp meter. Yesterday, I viewed the gentleman out there using the stimp, which is very interesting. It's a sort of a very basic mechanism to measure the green speed, but I guess it's very effective. And I was told that somewhere around 13 is what they're expecting.
Just want to take you back to 2006, because that was, of course, the tournament that Jeff Ogilvie won, and quite an interesting finish to that tournament as well. You had Jim Furyk and Colin Montgomery and Phil Mickelson all finishing runners-up. None of them parred the 72nd hole, which kind of gives you an indication as to how difficult it is. What are your memories of that 06 Open? Of course, it was Ogilvie's only major, but your memories of that tournament?
Well, it was a fabulous tournament. Jeff sort of came out of nowhere. As I think he stated in a recent article in Golf Digest, he was very fortunate in that Ian Poulter showed up with a very flamboyant outfit that day, a pink outfit and a pink bag. And Jeff stated that took all the attention away from him and allowed him to focus on his game, because all the crowd and all the commentators were really paying attention to Ian in their twosome. And obviously, Jeff had a miraculous chip in on 17 West. I mean, he made it fabulous up and down on 18 for par. But had he not made the chip in, I believe it was for birdie on 17 West, from the thick rough on the left side of the green, if it didn't hit the pin smack on and go in the hole, there's a chance that would have gone all the way across the green and into the other bunker. So that's an unheralded shot that not many mention. I think that was a key to his victory. Now, there's no denying that he made his second shot on 18 did not reach the green, or it did not end up on the green. It ended up on the right side before the false front. And he chipped it up, and he had about, I'm going to say it was a 5-footer downhill, which is not an easy putt, as many members and pros at Wingfoot, people who have played Wingfoot will tell you. It's not an easy putt at all, because it's a little bit tricky read. It's right to left. He probably played it inside right or maybe right edge. and he rolled it in, and he won the tournament. And hats off to him. He really deserves the to hold the trophy that year in 2006.
It's a sixth US Open for Winged Foot, and I know this announcement that Winged Foot would host it was actually 7 years ago in January of 2013. Is this a date in your diary you've been literally looking forward to since then? I presume it is, as someone who lives with their backyard leading onto the 10th green.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time for the club, for the USGA, for the players, for all the members at Winged Foot, because let's face it, Winged Foot has a long and storied tradition of great golf and great tournaments. And it's a fabulous golf course, fabulous club. The two courses are just unsurpassed anywhere in the world. And the membership is tremendous, and everyone is really we have a lot of great anticipation for this tournament to kick off on Thursday morning.
Well, listen, Paul, we'll keep an eye out for that Irish flag on the TV behind you across the weekend, and hopefully it's a good omen for the Irish players out on the course at the US Open at Winged Foot this weekend. But I'm sure you have a lovely view in front of you as well of the 10th green behind the camera here. So listen, enjoy the tournament, and thanks for giving us a little bit of a tour of your backyard.
Thank you, Shane. God bless. Stay well.
That's Paul Callahan being interviewed by GMAC. Oh no, sorry, Shane Hannon. Yesterday ahead of the US Open this week. We see you, Shane. Right. Stephen Doyle, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning, Ger. Morning, Eoin.
We're going to do Deal or No Deal in a couple of minutes' time, but we've got to talk about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Eoin started this show off by asking a very good question. Do the Bows fans want Rovers to win tonight or not?
I don't know why you'd ask me that question, Ger. It's funny you mention that, actually, because, I'll come back to the Tala thing in a minute, but listen, look, I suppose the most diehard of Bohemians fans, and I think the same goes across the League of Ireland, Ger. You get a large swathe of our League of Ireland fans who want to see League of Ireland clubs do well in Europe, because obviously it helps with our coefficient, and the better the coefficient is, the better the draw will be for us in the coming years. And I know our current phase of coefficient, which would have been pretty good after Dundalk's performances in Europe all those years ago when they got into the Europa League group stages, it would have been pretty good. But that's starting to, I think that ends at the end of, or at the beginning of next season's European competitions. So, look, there is that swathe of Irish fans, and I'm sure we don't want to see Rovers doing well. I want to see all League of Ireland clubs doing well because it improves the coefficient. But I think there will be the diehard fans, and I'd say there's a lot of them as well, Ger, that don't want to see other clubs doing well and making an awful lot of money, which then creates an imbalance within the league, as we've seen with Dundalk, So I would say
as it should be,
probably
right?
50-50. Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's the point of having a rivalry if you forget about it all of a sudden?
Absolutely, of course. So the Tala thing is interesting, though, Ger, because I was there all those years. Listen, my folks are from around the stomping ground at Dailyland Park, and I suppose that's why my allegiances became what they were. But I did grow up in Tala, and I remember all those years ago when Real Madrid came to town. Of course, Cristiano Ronaldo made his debut at Tala Stadium for Real Madrid after moving from Manchester United. And I just remember sitting in the stand there, and I remember when the square in Tala where the shopping centre is, I remember that was a wasteland when I was a kid. And I just remember at one stage watching Cristiano Ronaldo running up the left wing, attacking towards the square in Tala. I'm just going, this is totally surreal. I can't believe this is actually happening. It was quite bizarre, and but brilliant as well. And as brilliant as I'm sure it's going to be for Rovers fans and people from Tala watching Zlatan Ibrahimovic grace the turf at Tala Stadium this evening. Yeah, look, COVID has obviously taken so many more important things than sports occasions away from people. It's been a real life and death matter for so many people. But you do really feel a sense of a loss of occasion tonight, where a full packed house, a TV audience around the world watching, and maybe that crowd being able to somehow spur Rovers on. With no crowd, do you give them any hope tonight? I would give them a chance. Yeah, absolutely. I think the bookies had them 22-1, which I think is crazy considering it's a two-horse race, and taking into account that AC Milan, they're missing a couple of decent players through injury, and also they haven't played a game yet this season. This is their first game going in from pre-season, so you would give Rovers a chance. They play a very unusual system, Shamrock Rovers. They have a back three with three kind of midfielders that kind of tend to move well. Jack Byrne moves around with Gary O'Neill and Aaron McInniff in the middle there as well. So they play quite an unusual system, maybe something that AC Milan haven't come up against too often. Aaron Green then is obviously the lead striker, and he's not really what you would call a prolific striker, but he's excellent when it comes to link-up play and that kind of thing. I think where Rovers could hurt could hurt AC Milan is down the flanks. We saw a couple of weeks ago, Bohemians came to Tallaght Stadium, and at that time, Shamrock Rovers were in a little bit of a rut. They'd struggled through their last Europa League game against Ilves Tampere, and Ilves Tampere are mid-table in Finland, and Rovers were taken to extra time and then penalties. And I think that win in penalties really spurred them on then, because they had stuttered a bit in the league, 2 scoreless draws against Shelbourne and St Patrick's Athletic. They were coming up against teams that were finding hard to break down. They weren't creating a lot of chances. And then the Bohemians, of course, were in brilliant form when they went to Tallaght Stadium. It was a title decider, in effect, because Bohemians had closed the gap on them into second place. And Bows do play a 4-2-3-1 system, and Shamrock Rovers got at them down the wings. Well, Bows' big threat is down the either flank, and Shamrock Rovers nullified that. Well, they also created threats themselves down those flanks as well through Daniel Lafferty, and then Ronan Flynn on the right side. Lafferty got the goal coming in off the left. So AC Milan play that similar 4-2-3-1 system as Bohemians do, obviously with a much better quality of player. Yeah. But I think that's where they could get them down wide areas. I think it's going to be a real battle in midfield. I think it's a big loss for them having Liam Scales suspended. I think this guy, by League of Ireland standards, he's a Rolls Royce of a defender. Okay. I think he can go on to great things over in the UK. The shame he won't be there to maybe look after Ibrahimovic. But I think between Lopez and Grace, and also, of course, Joey O'Brien, who's got great experience, they can maybe do a job in Ibrahimovic tonight if he's not at full tilt.
Okay, all right. I just want to remind everybody, that at 10:30 this morning, Golf Weekly at a new time, obviously, because of the US Open this week. It will be streamed live across all of our social channels. Best place to get that is on the OTB Sports app. Search OTB Sports in your app store. Time now for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it? We're starting with the Gareth Bale deal, and I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that Dele Alli is on his way out of Spurs at the moment, particularly given everything that we've seen from Jose Mourinho since he arrived. Would letting Dele Alli actually be a good move or a bad move? And from Bale's perspective, is Spurs the right call over Manchester United?
There's a lot to consider here, Jerry, because I just wonder how long is Jose Mourinho going to be in this job. And if you're Dele Alli, you're kind of thinking, look, it's not going so well for me at the moment. I'm maybe not playing as much as I want to play. I'm just kind of predicting how the season might go on, because I think there definitely seems to be a rift between Mourinho and Dele Alli at the moment. So does he kind of think maybe, well, I should probably sit tight here and see what kind of manager comes in next and see if I can work with him? Because, look, Dele Alli, I think, has himself to blame slightly for what's gone on over the last couple of seasons. I was looking through his stats there again. The 15-16 season, what a season. He had sort of 16 goals, and he hasn't hit that form at all since. And that was, you'd include the time under Pochettino as well. So I think he has himself to blame a little bit as well. I think he needs a manager to come in there and to find his best qualities and bring the best out of him. And I still think he can do really well for Tottenham. Going to Real Madrid, do Real Madrid really want a player like Dele Alli? I don't think so. He's predominantly a left-sided midfielder, attacking midfielder. They've got the likes of Hazard, Asensio, then in the middle the likes of Kroos and Modric. So you just kind of wonder, Zinedine Zidane, I don't think he wants a player like Dele Alli coming to his club, and a player that he's going to have to work with and trying to get the best out of. So I just can't see that being a realistic part of the deal. It does look, for all intents and purposes, like Gareth Bale is going back to Tottenham. It looks like he has his heart set on going back to the club where he became such a folklore hero. And I think it could be a good signing. He's the kind of player that Jose Mourinho likes to bring in, a ready-made player with a lot of experience. He's big, he's strong. We think he's still quick. He hasn't played an awful lot of games over the last couple of seasons, so we are being told that it's going to take him a month to get to match fitness. And you would wonder if the results start going a little bit pear-shaped for Jose. Like, you know, I just wonder, is he going to be there by Christmas time?
Just on that, Steve-O, like when it comes to Harry Kane, if you're saying that Jose is he going to be there by Christmas, like what chance would you give Harry Kane being a Spurs player this time next year? Because it seems the longer Jose stays there, the less chance they have of holding on to Kane, because as we saw last Sunday, he's clearly not getting the opportunities that his talents deserve.
Another man who played at Tallaght Stadium actually against Shamrock Rovers, funny enough, Harry Kane, he was on the bench that time, came on as a sub against Rovers. But the one thing I'd say about Harry Kane is who's going to shell out the kind of transfer fee that Tottenham would expect for a player of his quality. And I still think there's question marks over Harry Kane and his ability to get back to where, like, he's had a couple of injuries over the last couple of seasons, and you just wonder how good is Harry Kane still. You know, he didn't look too great last week against Everton. I know he's only starting off the season, so look, we'll give him about 10 to 12 games, but if somebody is going to come in for him, I just wonder if it's not going to happen in this transfer window. I can't see it happen in the January transfer window, which is notoriously the one where clubs are kind of, I suppose, forced to pay a lot of money for players, maybe over the odds for players. And again, you just wonder who's going to pay all that amount of money for a player like Harry Kane, who there are question marks over now, legitimate question marks over. So I think it's a case of, I think Harry Kane will be there. I think Gareth Bale would provide just the kind of backup that they need if Harry Kane does get injured, because I know Bale's not an out-and-out striker, but I think he's shown that he can maybe, like Cristiano Ronaldo, adapt his game and perhaps become that central striker.
I hope Bale's going to work out, and I think it will. Give me a out of 10 for Dele Alli to go into Real Madrid.
1.
Okay, we got to be rapid fire now because we're almost completely out of time. The Evening Standard say Real Madrid and Spain left back Sergio Reguilon, 23. I need to learn how to pronounce that properly. Is it Spurs?
Reguilon.
Go again?
Reguilon. Yeah.
Is it, why do I say it in a French accent? This is ridiculous. Yeah. He's at Spurs training ground for a medical before £25 million move to the Premier League club. Did Manchester United fall asleep at the wheel again?
No, listen, the talk is that 25, 30 million euro, whatever the fee's going to be. But the big thing here was that Real Madrid were insistent on having a buyback clause. Now, to me, that's the kind of thing you do with a club that you believe are below your standard. Now, I can see why Manchester United might balk at that. They're kind of thinking, well, look, if we buy this player, if we're going to invest in this player, we want to keep him. This player is part of our future. And we're not going to put in a buyback clause, which would see maybe Real Madrid take the player back for a fee that is quite less than he might be worth in a couple of years. So I actually think United were right to stand firm on this. I do think they need a left back because I don't think Luke Shaw, I've told you guys so many times before, I don't think he's up to the standard. So I think United were right to stand firm because they have got two decent players there for that position. Okay,
the Mail reports Bayern Munich are ready to revive their interest in 19-year-old English winger Callum Hudson-Odoi. With the European champions increasingly hopeful Chelsea will listen to offers for their academy graduate. Is Frank Lampard deserting his young guns?
Well, I don't think he doesn't have too many young guns left there now. You know, there's Reece James, obviously the right back, Callum Hudson-Odoi you mentioned, and Tammy Abraham. He's 22 now. Is he really a young gun? But it does seem to be the case that, you know, Chelsea have bought in all this talent, and you know, we were told last season how delighted Chelsea fans were because Frank Lampard now was giving all these great young players that have come through this famed Chelsea system we've been hearing for so long.
Mason Mount.
Yeah, look, I think he's going to stay in the team. I think he's one of those players that's not going to suffer the action because of all these new players. Billy Gilmore might have to bide his time, I think, but he's still only 19, quite inexperienced, so he'll probably be happy to kick his heels for another little while. But I think Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think if I was him, I'm looking for a move out of there. Go to Germany. Look what happened to Jadon Sancho. Look what's happened with John Joe Kenny and so many English players have been there.
Bellingham.
He's got two players. Exactly. Two players to compete with. Kingsley Coman and Ante Rebic, who will be the left-sided midfielders for Bayern Munich. I definitely think Callum Hudson-Odoi can get in there ahead of those players.
Out of 10?
I'd give it an 8.
Okay. Arsenal, really quickly. Is Mikel Arteta making the right transfer moves to get Arsenal competing again? They're going to have to sell players, apparently, to sign Thomas Partey, who has a 45 million release clause at Atletico, and French midfielder who Leon value at 55 million. So that's 100 million quid that he wants to spend. They've already got Martinez gone to Villa. Guendouzi and Torreira apparently both being allowed to leave, and Bellerin is the one I think that he wants to keep but needs to sell to buy. So should Arteta keep hold of any of these and try and put his chips in on the 100 million players?
I love Lucas Torreira. I think he's a fantastic player. I actually like Guendouzi as well. I think he's going to be a much better player as the years go on. I think he's got some raw talent there. But look, it does look like they're, not flavour of the month with Arteta. If he can get about 40 or 50 million for those players and bring in Armati, I definitely think he should go for them. Aouar would be a nice player to get in. I don't think he needs him as badly, but I do think he's making the right transfers. I did say to you a couple of weeks ago that Willian was a good signing by them. He got 2 assists at the weekend. I think he's going to be a really good player for them. I like what Arteta's doing there. Gabriel Magalhaes, of course, he came in, scored on his debut as well. Saliba still has to play for them. Kieran Tierney's going to be a super player for Arsenal this year. I keep saying it. So, look, I think he is making the right transfer moves. I still stand by my prediction that they're going to get top 4 this season because I like what Arteta's doing. I think he needs to get Amartey in out of those 2 players. He's definitely the priority for him. And if he can get Aouar as well, he's been fantastic for Lyon. Definitely go for him as well.
OK, last one for now. Chelsea's move for Senegal goalkeeper Edouard Mendy has stalled as Rennes apparently want the England defender Fikio Tomori as part of a swap deal. How big of a risk is Kepa to Chelsea?
He's massive risk. We saw that against Brighton. I just don't think he instills confidence in his back 4. That's one of the most important things that you want from a goalkeeper. His big thing was shot stopping. He was always a really good shot stopper. We saw against Brighton at the weekend. There was he let that one slip under his body. I don't think he dominates his box as all great goalkeepers do. So I think if they can get rid of him and bring in Edouard as well, definitely that's a deal that has to be done for Chelsea. And look, he's lost the faith of Frank Lampard, and I'm sure that's not helping him either as a player. And it would do him good to get a fresh start under a manager who has faith in him.
We have a deal, according to The Athletic.
Oh.
Liverpool have agreed a deal to sign Spain midfielder Thiago Alcantara from Bayern Munich for a fee of around €30 million. Talks have accelerated since Monday after Bayern officials made clear they wanted it done before the Bundesliga start. A good move?
It's a fantastic move. I thought Jurgen Klopp, but I didn't think he wanted to spend so much money just because Liverpool had threatened to furlough all their staff those couple of months ago. I thought he felt it might look a bit bad if they were spending millions on players, but well, seems to be now. I hope he's going to recoup.
In the end, they had to back down, Steve-O. They didn't actually. They wanted to. The rich Americans, they were only making 100 million this year. It's not enough, buddy.
Absolutely. Well, listen, moving on to the player, I think Alcantara, look, he's a fantastic signing. We saw it in the build-up to in the run all the way up to the Champions League final. He was a key player for Bayern Munich. He was one of the main reasons why they won that final. He's a superb player. And it'll be interesting to see now what happens with Wijnaldum, because we know Ronald Koeman wants to sign him at Barcelona. Is he going to stick around now? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and United didn't hijack that deal in the end. Thanks, Steve-O. That's it for Deal or No Deal today.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training on driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it? So famously, one of the things that made Dublin into the force that they were was very hard training sessions from Mickey Whelan and Pat Gilroy, but also breaking down the element of flakiness that was in that team for the best part of a decade, and making the forwards be tacklers. One of the best forwards in the marquee forwards is obviously Bernard Brogan. We're going to hear the final part of our 3-part interview with Bernard Brogan in just a moment, where he talks about his relationship with Pat Gilroy. We'll also drop in Alan Brogan, who was one of the stars of that team and who apparently also took some flack from Pat Gilroy as they built up the winning mentality that ultimately becomes the team who win the 5 in a row. But in the meantime, just one final reminder, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Get our app. It's brilliant. OTB Sports is what you search in the App Store. And a reminder, today, live Golf Weekly from 10:30. This is an earlier time to preview the US Open. We'll also be streaming Brian O'Driscoll live on all of our social channels at around about 11:45. OTB Gold today is inside Harrington's gaff. So it's OTB Cribs with Porrick Harrington. The Cadbury Roadshow goes live from 2 o'clock. Ian Wright and Saul Campbell, we've already seen some clips of it and it looks sensational. Tommy Tiernan was in absolutely amazing form last Friday. He spent an hour in our company. You can hear that whole thing from 5 o'clock. And then OTB Gold today is the Chris Heron interview. So Heron was a highly touted recruit who played for the Boston Celtics and was also taking heroin at the same time. An amazing story about somebody who goes off to Iran and, risking life for a fix, who comes out the other side and now goes around the world telling people about his own story. So that's a brilliant interview coming your way from 6 o'clock tonight. Also the star of one of the best 30 for 30, I think it was called Unguarded. But in the meantime, sit back, relax and enjoy the final part of our Bernard Brogan interview. Cheers.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
So it's part 3 of our discussion with Bernard Brogan about his new book, which is called The Hill. And I'm delighted to say, to get straight into it, we have his brother Alan on the line. Alan, how are you?
Hey, Jared.
How's it going?
I'm good. Yourself?
You come out pretty well from the book. That's the first thing that we have to say here.
That'd be nice. That was a prerequisite. And to be fair to Bernard, I think he just put the rose tinted glasses on sometimes when he's talking about me.
I want to finish at the end, or I want to start rather at the end. And your last point kicked for Dublin. We've already had Mark O'Shea on talking about the Dublin-Kerry rivalry. If you were to script an end to a Dublin career, kicking the last score against Kerry in an All-Ireland final into the Hill, that's not bad.
Yeah. Look, I suppose it was perfect. And when I came back at the start of 2015, obviously losing to Donegal, 2014, I could have maybe went on the way out here and I said, look, we give it one more go, and the finish like that was pretty special. And like, I know not everyone gets to finish in those terms, kind of on their own terms, if you want to call it that. But I knew when I kicked that score that was right time to get off the stage here now.
You got the assist as well.
Yeah, I could have taken a leaf out of his book and retired a few years ago, but I know. It was a nice way to end. I'd say Alan probably was frustrated that year. He didn't get as much game time as he would have liked throughout the year, but it's all forgotten about when you get a score like that. So it was a nice tribute.
Yeah, I was looking at it again just to remind myself of it this morning. It was absolutely sensational score. Like, in fairness, I'm joking. Your assist is like a hand pass, still in your own half, just about, and it's a long dribble in wild conditions straight into the Hill and swarming Kerry defence, and it's a little swivel of the hips, and all of a sudden the space opens up and kicks a beautiful score.
Yeah, I think Dermo made a hard run looking for the ball inside him and brought the two defenders, and Alan's probably going to give it, and then he said, you know what, I might have a go at this. So it just opened up, and like he's done before, just slotted over into the Hill. Lovely end.
Can we go back then to the not so nice memories against Kerry? We've talked a little bit earlier on about the start of Learwig's game, Alan. The aftermath of that and what happens with Pat Gilroy is one of the most fascinating sections of the book, and I'm really interested in your perspective on it, because obviously we've got Bernard's in the book where there are training sessions where Pat Gilroy is giving it to him at a level that I'm not sure many people would take or be able for, and you're in the car going, don't worry, it's not personal. What's your recollection of that period of time?
Yeah, I think Pat challenged everybody. Maybe 4 or 5 in front, and after 2009, or whenever Meade got the 5 goals on us as well, I think that was 2010 maybe. But so, like, it wasn't all rosy in the garden at the start of kind of Pat's reign either, and it kind of took him a year or a year and a half to get to grips with it as well, and really start to implement the changes that he was trying to implement. And but he had a way about him, Pat. Like, he's I think Bernard talks about it in the book. Like, he has a kind of a sarcastic wit about him that he can say stuff like that, and it doesn't come across really, really harsh, but you get the message. And I think Pat did that with a lot of people. He could deliver a message with a bit of wit and a bit of sarcasm, but lads knew there was a serious undertone in it. And he also had to respect the guys that like, we worked hard in that group about kind of working on feedback with each other and kind of not taking it personal, and it was all about trying to improve the team. And I think as the years went on, we got better and better in that. And I think that's one of the real strengths, even following on to Jim Gavin's reign, that was one of the real strengths of this Dublin team, is that when something goes wrong or something needs to be said, lads can say it, and it's not perceived as an argument or a row. It's perceived as a bit of constructive criticism, and kind of lads are maturing enough to take it on the chest and move on. And to be fair, Bernard probably knew that he needed to do a bit of work on his defending as well, as I probably did as well, and that was the challenge that was put to us. And like, when you think of the score we got against Kerry, Stephen's free against Kerry, like, Kerry had possession of the ball in the last few minutes of the All-Ireland final in 2011, and some would say Kerry threw that away, but I firmly believe that turnover that we won back in the middle of the field was, for Kevin McMenam's goal, that turnover that we won back, we'd worked on that relentlessly in training, that sort of thing, compressing the field really tight and full forwards coming out to down the half forward line, midfield area to try to win a turnover. So it definitely wasn't something that happened by accident. It was something that we had worked hard on, and we were just lucky enough that it came to fruition at a crucial stage of that game.
You were slow enough to accept, though, that the role of the full forward was also to be a defender. You kind of felt like there should be an ability to stay up front, a bit of goal hanging, maybe.
Yeah, and it wasn't even in a really selfish way. It was more about if you're chasing all the way back, as what look what Ryan McMenam did, or what Philly Mack does to teams now, is he goes like to train out full back and brings a full forward all the way down the field, and then when they're trying to come back up, they're knackered. So I was just saying that should we have somebody up there holding their pace or holding their gas, so that when the ball comes up that they can take on their man and get a score. And that was I thought that there was merit in that argument, but I understood that obviously everyone rows in and there will be someone there. Like you just have to get on with it. But yeah, Pat had, as Alan said there, like he created this red zone where we wanted to work in numbers and to hunt in packs, and and then now he's saying it there, that turnover at the end was a byproduct of that.
Does he have a Homer Simpson voice? Because there's a bit where I'm like, oh, look at me, I'm Bernard Brogan. That's what I'm. That's
a bit like that, yeah. That's the way it felt, yeah.
It was. He put on a little voice, yeah, and he delivered a message. So, funny enough, I remember the meeting very well, and I was kind of about to agree with Bernard and say, yeah, maybe we could leave somebody up there. It didn't always have to be Bernard, but it'd be good to have somebody up there if we want to turn over. And thank God
you didn't voice it, yeah.
Because it was a complete and utter setup by Pat to lure Bernard into that. To kind of say that I'll stay up here and let the lads do the work, and then I'll be fresh when it comes up. So he really did. He was like a fish on a hook learning, man. I think everyone could see it, as Bernard says in the book, and he was in too deep before he could. I
saw it coming then at the end, and I was like, I can't back out. I have to back the point, but I knew he was ready to cut me in half.
So is this after the start of the Airways game, or is this even later?
This was after it, yeah.
Before the 2010 season, because 2010 you're not getting in the team at the start of the year and end up footballer of the year. So.
Yeah, it was in around that period, probably after the National League, where I was probably turning the corner. But as Alan said, it wasn't just me. He was asking hard questions of. He understood psychology well. He went away into the course in psychology that I think in 2009 about just understanding people's mindsets. And he put a lot of pressure on Alan for different things. Barry Cahill, a lot of senior players got asked a lot of hard questions by Pat, not just me. Mine was probably the heaviest, but he probably sensed that I got energy from it. Like I love when he called me out, and I give an example of. He's a great leader. By then, in one stage, one of those meetings that he called me out, he actually rang me before it and said, I said this before, and he said, Bernard, I'm just to let you know, I'm giving you a heads up, I'm going to cut you in half in this meeting. I just feel the group needs to have it, and I think you're whatever you did at the weekend, I think I'm going to use that, but just want to give you a heads up. And I was like, God, this is great, like I'm on the inside circle here. So his leadership was that I was empowered, he went into the group, he cut me in half, and the rest of the team were like, God, we have to be selfless and do all this stuff, and I'm there to take the battering ram. But that was the sense of how his leadership was, that he understood how to use.
That's after you obviously responded well to the earlier stuff, because at the start, did you know he was on? I mean, obviously you knew he was on your side, but you must have been a little bit concerned that the new manager has come in and it's like, oh, I actually, I don't think you understand my philosophy. You're going to have to work much harder. You're going to have to work from the front, and you're not my team at the moment.
Yeah, and I believed that I could change that. Do you know what I mean? Like I was playing pretty well. I was getting scores. I was doing that bit. So that was my argument back. It's like, I'm scoring five or 6 points from play here. What's the problem? Is that not enough? And he's like, no, it's not enough. Like, we want to get over the line. We need to work hard as a team to win the big games. And I kind of and he just pushed me hard for that. So I felt I had enough quality. I just felt I had to work on some things. So it was kind of that energetic motivation that I was going to get after and be fitter and be better. And when I actually did work harder for the team, I actually ended up getting more chances. The ball was coming back to me as much. I'd pop the ball off someone, I'd ground the loop, I'd make another run, and I'd end up with the ball back and clip it over the bar. So it was actually it actually made me become a better footballer. Albeit I was working hard for a team, but I also got more scores and got into plays much better as well.
Yeah, and it's the old adage, the harder you practice, the luckier you get. Seriously though, Alan, when you were in the car telling them, don't worry, it's not just you, it's grand, did you think that, or were you actually thinking, geez, Pat's going a bit hard on him?
I knew that it was never personal with Pat, and at that stage he'd built up a trust with the players that as I said, we were willing to take criticism and we knew it wasn't personal. And I think, to be fair to Bernard, it wasn't that Bernard didn't track back or didn't work hard or stuff. I think Pat just saw an opportunity to kind of use Bernard as a medium to deliver the message. And what better fella to do with than like your marquee forward. And he felt if he could get Bernard leading the charge on this sort of stuff, then the message would just filter down to everyone else anyway, and he'd have his job done, you know. So in a way, I think he was using Bernard just to get the message across, rather than sometimes really having a go at Bernard. Yeah, he wanted Bernard to work harder, but I think if he had Bernard leading the charge and this sort of stuff, then the message would just filter down to the rest of the team automatically. Which it did. And like, I don't think Bernard might have got upset at times, but I don't think he ever really took it as personal criticism. And as Bernard said there, Pat would often kind of line up a meeting beforehand with the message he knew he was going to deliver. He might have a chat with the guys he was going to use in the meeting. He did that with me a couple of times as well, and that was just the way his way of managing. And he had the trust of the players, certainly the senior players, that was okay to do that.
And it obviously worked. Mark O'Shea, the first thing he said was that, you know, he couldn't bring the ball out easily. He talked about getting caught by you in the championship. There's a line in the book from Mickey Hart. Well, that was different after you guys go up and play them in Tyrone. So you could see the benefit of this coming through. Is that where the confidence comes from in 2011, when the game looks lost? When, under normal circumstances, this Dublin team for the last decade has lost all those games in the pinch, where you're a few points down, there's a few minutes to go, you put in a good performance. Do you know what? Everybody's going to pat you on the back and say, oh, you're nearly there, you're getting there.
Yeah, I think that was the exact thing that Pat was trying to change, was that last 5 minutes in the game, that when it's in the balance, whether you're a point up or you're a point down, do you have the belief to just finish out those few minutes? And he started that, he didn't call it the process, but he started that mindset around finishing out to the end. Mickey Whelan, I can hear in the voice in my head ringing, Mickey Whelan, come on fellas, finish it out, keep going. His training was like, could be an hour and a half, could be 2 hours, it was like longer, keep going, never stop. And that was where that came from. It's just to keep going till the end, and if we keep doing that on a regular basis, we will come out with the results. I know Alan even played, like I came in 2007, Alan was a big player in the years that a lot of those games went against us that they could have won, you know what I mean? And that was a mindset thing. I think it's definitely a mindset. When you're in the hat so many times and you come out the wrong side, that's down to mindset.
Mickey Whelan's like the mad scientist in Back to the Future, where you don't know how long the training sessions are going to be. And for somebody who's so invested in sports science, Alan, it seems weird listening to the whole kind of 2 training sessions a day. But that was actually breaking everybody down to build them back up. There was a method to that madness.
Yeah, there was. And I think as well as that, there's obviously a lot of talk with the 2 sessions a day, but it was only in a couple of blocks during the season that we actually did that, when we were working really, really hard on our fitness. And I suppose Mickey's philosophy was that instead of having 4 or 5 days a week, why don't we do 2 sessions on a Tuesday, 2 sessions on a Thursday, and then you have a rest day in between. And look, it was tough, but I think the guys who were involved in the time really enjoyed it. It was hard getting out of bed at 5:30, but there's lots of teams doing it now, training early in the morning. Lots of people go training early in the morning, so it's not. That kind of set the tone for it when that started to leak out. But I know the guys that were involved and certainly enjoyed it, and it just gave you that bit of belief that you have the work done, and once you have the work done, the training in the tank, then it's easier to go out and deliver a performance on a match day. But yeah, Mickey Whelan was like that. He was obviously very knowledgeable about the whole sports science, about the rest, recovery and stuff, and that became a huge part of what we were doing as well. But there was the occasion where he just decided that as Bernard says, we just keep going here, and it was to really test the lads, test the mettle of the lads, obviously work on that extra bit of fitness. But I think the guys that were involved in that team relished it at the time. Because
people are disappearing from training sessions and never being seen again. It is very Darwinian in some ways, and that's the birth of the success.
Money in the bank is what Mick Whelan used to say. Money in the bank, fellas, money in the bank. You cash it in over the summer. That's basically what he's trying to do. He's trying to give you a mindset that you've done the hard work, that when you were in a sunny day in Croke Park with 70 minutes gone, you think back to that morning, you did it for an hour and a half in the snow out in Clontarf or wherever it was. And I remember some sled sessions, they're well documented, but it's some out in Alfie Byrne there, out in Clontarf in Fairview. In the snow, and seeing lads who had to bulk up. So there's certain lads were doing different things, and some of the lads doing the sleds inside the pitch, and you see them puking at 5:30 in the morning after pushing sleds 180 kgs on it up and down the park for an hour straight, and it was, as you say, draconian stuff. But
and much different from what you would have been doing under Pillar.
Like Pillar, really, and I'm not sure if it comes across in the book, but Pillar, and Alan will probably even resonate this even better. He really started that culture piece. That word culture really came into my head through the Pillar days, and he was, as I said, maybe one or two ingredients or nuggets off having that team been really successful, but he really founded that camaraderie, that living the legacy piece, the culture piece, even the preparation to having coaching in each line, have forwards, defensive coach, midfield coach, our nutrition, our diet. We had a strength and conditioning coach. Like he genuinely brought us on to a new level that Dublin hadn't been in. And Alan was obviously there with Tommy, who was another great manager as well. But for me, Pat just brought it to that foundation that Pillar had. He had a great culture, a great group of lads. Just needed to be pushed harder maybe, and just maybe pushed on another gear.
And the belief, Alan, comes from the shared trauma of that training, and then the progress that you can see everybody making at the same time.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair to Pillar, as Bernard said, he played a huge role in all of this as well. And if you think of some of the players, we were obviously really, really close with Pillar, but we were probably lacking a few players. Like Bernard came into his prime 2009, 2010 with Dermot Conley, with Kevin McMenamin. So we probably had a better side coming into better players coming into Pat's reign than we had under Pillar. But as Bernard said, Pillar's attention to detail and the preparation stuff was fantastic. I used to get my jersey, used to be too big for me, and he'd arranged to have the jersey stitched Friday or Saturday before the championship games. Yeah. Stitch the seams of the inside of the jersey so the jersey would be a bit tighter on me, that sort of stuff. So there was absolutely no stone left unturned on the Pillar as well. I just think Pat, there was a great base there. Pat and Mickey came in and just added an extra couple of layers onto it and had 3 or 4 extra players than what Pillar had, and that's probably what got it across the line.
And that's why telling my story in this book that I had a bit of comfort, because you can't replicate, though, as Alan said there, the building of foundations that Pillar did, the personal challenge he put on players.
You're not giving anything away. Here's the magic bullet. You can take that. Everybody's got
the magic bullet is 15 years of hard graft and
the failures stitched in.
Failures, the learning from it. Yes, you need players as Alan said, they're coming in and you need that marrying of really good players at the single time, but there's no silver bullet to Dublin's success. It is attitude, it's preparation, but it's culture, the foundation layers layered over many years and managers before them,
I think the obsession with psychology that Pat Gilroy brings in, there had been some under Paul Caffrey, but it goes to a new level under Pat Gilroy, and it goes to another level again when the players themselves are starting to lead the sports psychology, and you've got Kevin McMenamin leading meetings. What difference did that make to you? Were you somebody who bought into that straight away, that actually there's an edge here that I can get and I'm going to take it?
Yeah, I bought into the mindset piece. I bought into anything that the manager said, all the way back to I was just trying to be better, I was trying to learn. I always gave it a try. I say in the book about Pillar's time of our mindset piece, where we had to ring each other and trying to get the collaboration piece. And I had to ring Kieran Whelan and chat about how training was the week before. I was in there a wet week, and Wheelo was the pillar, the mountain of a man that'd been driving the team, So what was I going to add to him? But that was, Pillar was trying these things, and as you said, throughout the years it got to an amazing place, and Gary Keegan finishing off and still doing a bit with the lads, I'm sure. But everyone takes something different from it, you know what I mean? The older lads might take something different from the younger lads. Kevin McMenamin's a guy who went away and studied it. He now works in that space of mindset. He works with the amateur, the boxers, that are looking to win Olympic gold medals. So he's lived it, he's loved it, and he went and studied it. Now he works in the space. What a story, you know what I mean? And that's what I love when he talked. And any as you say, the player stuff, the Kevin Mack, that it's from the heart when he chats about it. And Michael Darmacali as well, who works at it, does yoga. Saw him on TV with the toughest show there, doing yoga for lungs.
Got away with wearing those yoga pants. I can't believe he got away with it.
You think yoga pants? He wears them on a regular basis. He's an eclectic guy. But I think the mindset piece, and I remember even back in the day when Pillar's time, you'd hear some of the older guys saying, it's not for me, I'm too old, I'm too far gone, and stuff like that. And so you have to, in the group, and you have to have a manager that will allow that kind of difference of opinion that people can come into it and take a lot from it, or people can just take a bit from it. So it's a balance.
Yeah, and Alan, the other thing I suppose about the Mickey Whelan and Pat Gilroy was that actually they decided that the style of play was going to change and become more defensive, and that puts a greater onus on the attacking players to be able to carry the burden of scoring. And I don't know what that was actually like for you as a forward to live through.
Yeah, I suppose I never really kind of thought of it like that at the time. Like, I knew after 2008 and 2009, and that wasn't Pat's philosophy necessarily at the start. Like, he kind of evolved into that as well, based on what we needed in the team. And look, I kind of recognised that as well. So I was obviously happy enough for us to say, right, let's get our house in order at the back first, and then we'll worry about what's going on up front after that. But I think that he kind of worked on the defensive strategy first, but it was the whole team. It wasn't just the 6 defenders in the midfield. It was the forwards were had to tackle more as well. And every game we went out and played, we had a target for our tackle count. For every quarter, there was a target for the tackle count. And when we didn't hit the tackles, that was the only thing Pat cared about for a year, was where we were in our tackle count. And like he always said, until we got that right, until we got that at a consistent level, and above 100 tackles, then we weren't going to win in All Ireland. So that's what we were aiming for every game, was 100 tackles, and more often than not, in the games where we reached that or came close to it, they were matches we won, and games where we didn't come near it, they were matches we lost over the course of his reign.
You talk about the legacy of Gilroy. It's a commercial legacy in terms of actually revolutionising and understanding exactly what the power of the Dublin brand was, and getting those sponsors involved and putting the facilities and in place in the back room as well. The football legacy was that team was ready to go, and when Jim Gavin comes in, the mechanics of what the team becomes in the 5 in a row are already there. Is that fair? Is that like Jim is inheriting a very good situation here where, like, what's the difference between these two? How would you characterise the difference between the two teams?
Yeah, Pat did a lot of work and a lot of building on it, and obviously got us over the line in 2011. And probably, he probably could have stayed on if he had the ambition. He's obviously very big businessman as well, and he had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life that he had to. The manager of a Dublin team has to commit a lot of hours to things, and as the years go on, it's even more. So yeah, Jim inherited a great bunch of lads. He says in my last meeting with Jim, he said he wanted to thank me for the group, not just me, but the group welcomed him in as a manager. It's well documented when Mickey Whelan came into the team in '96, the Dublin team, and I'm sure loads of dressing rooms around the country, when a team is successful and a new manager comes in, there's certain things that were done, certain styles of play, certain ways of doing things that the senior players believe in that a manager mightn't, and there can be conflict. But in fairness to Pat, the way he'd set us up and the way he'd built the team, we were a very respectful team. We were hungry to learn. We were hungry for success. And Jim benefited from that, and we benefited, I suppose, from it. But having that mindset that we were just willing to get after things, we hadn't fulfilled their potential, and we felt like there was more in the tank. And Jim hit the ground running, and I'd say it definitely helped that momentum. Obviously, 2013 we got over the line. 14 we had a blip, and that set us on the road. But definitely, I think every manager had a massive part to play in the legacy of this, and Pat really, for me, because he kind of, I worked so closely with him, and he put so much pressure on me and got me to be the best I could be. I'd feel he had a big role in it. What was your favourite All Ireland? It's a hard one. 2011 would probably be very difficult to top the crack, and just getting over the line. It was 16 years. Like Alan had been playing for I don't know how long. It was 9 years, 10 years playing, and I've been around there since 2005. It's been nearly a relief getting over the line, and we had great crack. We partied hard and really enjoyed it. Nothing ever beats your first time, you know what they say?
Yeah. Well, what about you, Alan?
Yeah, definitely 2011. Sure, hardly played in any of the other ones that we won. Yeah, 2011 for obvious reasons, the first All-Ireland, and then 2015, obviously finishing off the way it did. That will always be special too, but I think, as Bernard said, it's very hard. Considering what had gone into 2011, like the 10 years previous for me, the lads I played was like Clucko, Barry Callahan, Mossy Quinn, Paul Casey, these lads who had been there since the start, and to finally get it across the line when it looked for so long that we wouldn't. As Bernard says, probably a huge sense of relief initially that we finally managed to get one. But it was then obviously after that was a fantastic few months after that, and we probably paid a bit of a price for it in 2012. But that's history now. But I think for me it was always going to be hard to replicate the feeling in 2011. So I'd have to go with that one.
Yeah, it's almost inevitable at some point that the first time after a famine things are going to go a little bit haywire. But listen, it's been great chatting with you, Bernard. The book is brilliant, and I hope it's going to be a massive success. It's called The Hill. It's available now in all good bookshops. Continued success with it, and thanks to both the Brogans for talking to us there.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Thanks, Jared.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
We all talk about what might happen and our hopes and dreams for the day, but that's not real life.
Dadcast with Cadbury Freddo Treasures. Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB